And we're live.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. And welcome to the Guitar Gear Locker. My name is Alex Books, and this is my co-host, Roger Sutherland. And this is our live show number 15 now. And we have my friend, Mr. Josh Elmore of the mighty Cattle Decapitation. Great guitar player, great songwriter. And finally, we've talked about this for a little while now to get you on the show, and we finally got you on.
Yeah, I'm glad we could finally get on. So great.
Yeah, so welcome to the show, Josh.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, so I guess I kind of want to go back a bit and get into, how you got into music, and if there was, a moment when you were like, you know what, I want to be a guitar player. This is what I want to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was just like I grew up on a farm in a rural area, so there was a lot of time, transiting into town for groceries or whatever. So I remember from just being a little kid always telling my mom, like, oh, turn on the radio when I got in the car. And so at that time, depending on when I was fully aware of just wanting to hear this song, that song. So it was probably late 70s, early 80s. Yeah. So I was like, at that time it was like, Van Halen had just started to get obviously they were big late 70s or whatever, but had just really started to gain prominence, on hard rock radio in the middle of central Illinois. Right. So hearing that and all that stuff and, older Def Leppard and everything. And that's what kind of made its imprint on me at that time. And then, so I started, I think it was my 8th birthday or 7th birthday or something, 8th birthday, I think. Everyone had a ghetto blaster and wanted a ghetto blaster and stuff like that. So, these kids would come to school or do show and tell, and they'd have these huge things, and then I was like, oh, I want to get a blaster too. So my parents got me like a general GE one because, it's not one of those foreign brands we don't trust,
Right.
So yeah, the GE, the kind of the smaller one and everything like that. So I had that, and I got 2 tapes, 3. Well, technically my first tape, my mom's like, well, I didn't know what you wanted, so I just bought something I'd want to hear. I was like, you haven't heard me talking about, the very much Homer Simpson's gift for me, gift for you kind of thing. But actually what she did get me was the Christopher Cross album, with all the Ride Like the Wind, Sailing and all that.
Right.
Oh, wow.
Album rips.
Yeah.
So
that's
my favorite.
That's actually Christopher Cross. That's actually our drummer, Steve's. That was one of his kind of things he got into really early. It's funny you say that,
Really?
Yeah. I love that record. And of course the playing's amazing on it. That's looking back now, from this perspective and this time period, it's like the playing's amazing. It just sounds incredible. And,
right.
Regardless of being, the whole yacht rock thing. Either way, I got that. But then when I was able to go into town, to get the tapes that I wanted, one was Van Halen, 1984, and then Night Ranger, Midnight Madness. So
yeah,
I was killing it with those. And then I started, would save my money up from working, because farm kids. So, you getting paid that, whatever it was in the early 80s, minimum wage, like $2 an hour, $1.75 an hour, right, to save for tapes and everything. So I, would just buy, I got into Rad, Twisted Sister, all the kind of that sort of stuff at the time. And then, bought my first hit parader in 1985 or 6. Rat was on the cover. I remember I did that whole thing at a small town store that for some reason, it's a town of 300 people, whoever was buying the magazines for there had hit parader. Hot Shots was like the off sort of the visual element for so anyone who didn't want to really weed through all that really thick literature and hit parader. Right. Then Metal Edge, and then they even had Rip, and if you remember that another hit parader offshoot, Power Metal.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, yep, I remember that.
Yep. Yeah, it wasn't about power metal like we think of it now. It was all like Slayer and King Diamond and Cider and whatever.
Issue that when that came out, actually, that Power Metal magazine. I was like, wow, look at this, nice. An American magazine where there's all the cool underground stuff going on.
Yeah, and then, so I was getting into that, and then my favorite parts of those, like the back hit parader, was always like the ads for like earrings and T-shirts and tapestries, because tapestries were used back then apparently. it was like the little 8th-page ads that had like, it looks like someone drew it on their notebook in study hall for like bands, you know, like, oh, what's this band? Oh, this is Unfortunate Accident or horrible, unforeseen death or whatever. Like, oh, let me send this little self-addressed stamp envelope with $5 in it that I'll probably never see. And, you get a demo back, maybe. I wish I still had all that stuff, but it was like I kind of got off where I was topic here, but like,
it's funny you're bringing back all kinds of memories though.
Oh yeah, like well, get into that a little later, but yeah, I just started ordering stuff and then buying, and then when we went into town once again with that, finding record stores in the phone book, I just sit there and like do that sort of method. And then since that town had a Big Ten university there, the students, so there was record stores that were like very well curated.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Buyers. So I was fortunate. So basically I would, graduate from buying cassettes at Target and the mall or whatever to going to these record stores where you had like, oh, here's, I don't know, like the kind of the proto death, like late thrash, kind of like maybe the first Pestilence record, maybe early Creator, maybe that era stuff. So then I was able to go there, and then they had a bunch of stuff that was more like, these kind of like, they had their whole like kind of alternative section, which was all like, the punk and hardcore of the era, that time period, all the like New York's hardcore was getting, more prominent, all that sort of metallic influence. So it was like, it was just, I was very fortunate to have that in like one other record store in that town. And I can point to that. And then that little local 300 population town that had the store that had Rip and Hit Parader and all that stuff is really kind of allowing me to have exposure to that. Because otherwise, you're in the middle of Illinois in that time period.
Right.
Radio's not playing any of that, obviously. You had to really look for it, which was the beauty, and I miss that. But
right.
But as you mentioned, or you started to mention earlier with ordering stuff, like I did that with, I don't know how many. I never got ripped off, actually, which I'm shocked that never happened.
Right.
But I remember ordering Pusshead stickers because Metallica's got this Pusshead.
Yeah. Septic Death. I don't know if you remember that. That was Pusshead band, actually. Really good stuff.
Yeah, it was a Septic Death, and then there was the.
Well, and you said you lived in the more country part of Illinois, and I don't know if you found this to be true up there, but I grew up in the DC area, and so you would be more mainstream in the music up there and more current. But if you went to the country, like out in, probably where we live now, Alex, would have been country back then. But if you went into the country, it's almost like music was 10 years older. They were still listening to things and I didn't know if it was like that where you were growing up, like
absolutely
where you were, it was almost like 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like absolutely. That was definitely the case. So I remember when I was maybe a freshman in high school, like one of those record stores I was mentioning, I found Symphonies of Sickness and then Left Hand Path and all that. And I remember bringing those into school because why? And just got to show my friends, look what I got,
Yeah.
And looking at it, like, not even because of the content, of course, the covers of Symphonies of Sickness is pretty gross or whatever, but it was just like this. What is this, and where do you find this stuff? Not even a matter of like, because the style musically or the visuals were repulsive, but like just having whatever part of that culture, or just like whether it was that style of music or anything else. How do you find this, and where do you get, like, how is this available to someone who lives in this area? I'm like, well, you just got to go look for it. I mean, like I said, I had that college town near there, so all sorts of cultural outlets, be what, art or literature, anything was there, So I think it was just people were like, oh, it's not just what you hear on the radio or what's in the library or whatever. You just got to kind of look for it. And I had at that age like that insatiable sort of desire to find all that stuff. It was whatever was the most. What's the heaviest? What's heavier? What's faster? What's more aggressive? More abrasive, and that just kind of, regardless of the, looking back, the quality of some of it, it's just like I didn't care. I just need more of this intensity.
Right.
Sure. Yeah, but no, as you said, it's definitely, the internet becoming prominent later was a great equalizer. And all that. Obviously, all the information hits everyone at the same time, and that's why I feel almost people who do live if they choose information, if you choose to receive it, kind of thing. If you do live in a more rural area, you almost have an advantage because maybe your cost of living's less. So then you're not constantly, freaking out about money, or rent's less. I mean, wages maybe equal to that, but like you have all this time, and you're not just battling whatever urban sort of environment or just the cost of living and the stress in those areas.
Right.
And you can just dump yourself into your music, and if it's not just like the guys in bigger bands that, have whatever financial success and like, oh, I'm going to move to Montana. It's like more like, well, I'm at this point in my life, it just makes more sense for costs and to be able to do music as much as I want to be kind of out in the middle of nowhere potentially.
Right. Right.
Yeah. It's you're basically telling my story, it's just like that progression too, from like, the 60s, 70s music and searching for something darker, more extreme. And the same thing of like putting the work in to find stuff. It's not like, like talking about the internet today where kids can just type something and everything's at your fingertips. Like we had to work to find music, and like records, and you didn't know what you were getting. You kind of look at the cover of the record, and you look at the back, the song titles, and you were just like, oh, this looks like what I'm looking for.
Yeah. I mean, everyone got burned different times, but yeah, I love the hunt of that. That was so great. I mean, just now it's like Frontier or like wherever, if there is a good record store, like it's not that I don't have the drive to find new music. I'm just like, man, at that point in my life, I would just sit there for hours and like, comb through and like, do you guys have a bathroom? Okay, go, come back, continue or whatever. But yeah, I just missed that. The chase and the sort of like taking a gamble. It's $12 of my own money. I guess I hope this doesn't suck, and then
right,
winning, losing sometimes. So
yeah. You brought up Van Halen in 1984, and Alex, I'm sure I've told you a story. So, going back to more of the country and the city thing, we were kind of on the scene in the DC area when Van Halen first popped. And then I remember we would come down to this area, which was very much country back then, compared to up in the DC area. And I remember when 1984 first came out, we were down here with our friends that were down here in Virginia. We would come down here on weekends, and they would, did you hear that new band or that new band Van Halen that just came out, that 94 or 1984 album? We're like, they've been out. What are you talking about? It just hadn't hit down here.
Yeah.
It's really funny. Weird. You mentioned 1984, and the guitar tone that Eddie got on that record is actually very similar, I think, to what you have going on, Josh, with your guitar tone, because it's, and the same thing like how I do things. There's over time, it like gain got less and less.
Yes.
And it's your guitar tone is, there's a lot of clarity there, and you need it for all the stuff that you do, all the chords and things like that you use, because if you have too much gain on there, it's just gonna push, and but yeah, it kind of it's I don't know, it's just funny when you mentioned 1984, and I just like I do that connection of like that tone that you have going on with your guitar playing.
Yeah, I think like eventually, like where I kind of arrived at, I think as far as my taste of what I wanted to get out tonally was, harkening back to those classic records. It's just like, I wanted that sort of clarity, and it was no separation and stuff, but we're just more modern being very relative, aggression to it. Like if you could have like the Carlos Cavazo, Bang Your Head, that guitar tone, which is probably it's a white flying V with a super distortion into a MP or whatever cranked out. Have that, but with just a little more low end, a little more this to sculpt it. And I mean, that's obviously people have been doing the modded Marshall thing since time immemorial or whatever. But it's just, I mean, that's what I wanted. It's like there's like, I was like, if we're talking to like the guy Dave Otero that does our records, I mean, he's heard me say it a million times, but like just maybe that element of rock and roll there. Yeah, have it punishing and heavy, whatever. But that Quran sound, it's just like, that's the mids that have those angry mids.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what, I don't know how it translates for people who aren't musicians or aren't guitar enthusiasts or whatever, but it's just like, you hear that, it's just like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
or something, So no, it's interesting you say that because I've kind of, I like everyone else, went through every stage of like, not to say more gain better or anything, but just like looking back now, like, oh, I could dial it back to like little over 5, little over halfway, and you still have all the saturation you need, enough to be, whatever the fluidity.
Sure.
But it's not like something where you touch it and it explodes and you feel like you're like stepping on all the wrong things, like because it's so sensitive. You know what I mean? It's like I was just actually, yesterday I was working on our computer here. It's just like a Reaper, just with like the Cali Fortin plugin or one of those kind of neural DSP things. And I was like, at this part, I was like, it just sounds like crap. And I'm probably not, I just came up with it, so it's probably not playing it very well and everything. And then I'm just like, well, let me back off the gain a little bit, because it was a preset and I should have checked more thoroughly and I didn't. I back off the gain. I'm like, oh, okay, there it is. It's just like that, like there's this like static wrapped around the notes, and it's just like not even a fuzziness. It's just, I don't know. It just clarifies things, and I don't know. I know I'm gonna change my stuff up 10 different more times. I mean, same rig and everything, but I'm gonna fiddle with my dials. But like where I'm at now, I'm pretty happy with as far as gain levels go.
Right.
Yeah. So can you recall like when you the first guitar that you got, and like how old were you when you first started playing?
It was 1987, so I was 12. And I played saxophone in like the junior high concert band and jazz band. And so I really wanted a guitar because, I mean, if I was 12, so then it was obviously like Metallica and, the bigger thrash bands and everything.
Right.
And so I remember like begging my parents or my mom. My dad wouldn't have been hearing any of it. My mom was like, guitar and everything, and they're really not that expensive. So I kind of like, maybe like in like September, October, started planting the seeds of like, oh, can we stop by this music store in town next time we're there? I just want to look at the guitar. I was like, you don't play guitar? I'm like, yeah, I just want to look at them. So you go, especially being that time period, it was like all BC Rich and, all that and stuff. And I was just like staring at those, and, they'd be like, oh, you want to plug in? I'm like, well, I don't really play. Oh, nonsense. Here, plug in. And they, of course, immediately regretted that. And, but I just, kind of was just kept laying it on thick with that. And so I think my mom finally had mercy on me. And so for Christmas, I got it was like a guitar, like one of those guitar gig bag, little tiny little amp for like $150 or something like that. And it was I checked because I'm curious, like the company's still around, but it was called Saga. And it was like, I think what the deal was is because this store that she got it from was the same store that like serviced our band instruments for high school. So they did mostly repairs, like, trombones or whatever, but they had the small guitar section. Here's, guitars of the day, whatever. So she got it from them. So I think it was almost a kit guitar that they just put together. And cherry red, had the pointy headstock, so I was happy. Like cherry red, single humbucker, 2 singles, horrifically bad tremolo or vibrato on it. But I didn't care. I was like, this is super cool. So I like, I remember Christmas morning, like going and plugging everything in, and, I was filling with the amplifier and it fed back a little bit. And I just hear my dad go, oh no. And just hit, it'd gone from, I think my mom had it in the car overnight or something like that. So it was all cold and bringing it into the house. So, I mean, not that I had any concept of what tuning was at that point. So I just hit something. It was like, bah! And I think both parents were like, oh, no.
Like, what did we do?
Yeah, at least it wasn't drums. But so yeah, that kind of started it. And then, I was taking lessons from the guy at that store who was in a kind of a prominent local, like, kind of not hair metal, but just like very traditional heavy metal band, kind of stuff. He was super shredder dude, and took lessons from him for a while, and then went to another guy who was more of a blues dude. So that didn't really, I don't know. He wasn't impressed when I showed him music I wanted to learn. So, but I just went from there. And I think, mostly the first like year, just more put the guitar in and jumped around with it as opposed to actually trying to play it. And then finally I was like, oh, I better actually figure out what I'm doing, maybe. So I, learned a few chords, got a book and learned a few chords or whatever. And then, Just kind of started playing really rudimentary, chuggy bar chord stuff. And then I decided at that point, I think maybe a year and a half, 2 years later, well, I've been playing 2 years. I really need another guitar, of course.
Right.
So I traded in the Saga. I think I got like $75 for it or something like that. And I got one of the local stores had like a yearly, their garage sale where they were blowing everything out. I got a neck through Charvel Model 2 single bridge pickup, one of the Jackson pickups, one of those horrible Floyd Road licensed pot metal bridges. It was just with the block. Yes.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
Horrible. But the guitar, it played great, felt great. And that was my first real guitar, So I had until maybe a couple of years ago. So it's
nice. Wow. Yeah, they were great guitars. I mean, like you said, the only thing the problem was with those Floyds, the snap. I don't know what you would call that piece where it snaps on, on the saddle.
Yeah. I always had problems with it breaking right at the bridge and snap right by that block, and mental anguish to fix it and everything.
Yeah, I had a Charvel 3DR. I don't know if you remember them, and it was a bolt-on body, reverse headstock. The first ones they started reverse, and it had a hum single coil configuration.
Oh yeah.
Was the single coil like tilted? Yeah. Okay, I remember.
Yeah. Awesome guitar though. But so did you, when you were living in Illinois, were you playing in some bands before you moved out to California?
Oh yeah. I was, I had a band that I was like, I remember when I was at one of those record stores, I saw an ad with, the pull off, like, here's the guy's phone number, I need a guitar player or whatever. And half of his influences were like, he goes, Old Venom, Slayer, Judas Priest, whatever. And the other side was like DRI, MDC, more aggressive, like fast core at the time. Yeah. So I was like, okay, cool. I like both those things. So I called him up, and he was like, I was maybe 15 at the time, and he was out of college. So he was like maybe 23, 24. And he was horrifically desperate because he called me back. And, I had my mom drive me into town and, like spend a few hours hanging out with him. And he showed me some of his stuff and gave me a demo tape he'd made of like riffs and everything. And so I just went home and just tore through that and just listened to it a million times, tried to play with it and everything like that. And I think he was just, when I called him again, I think he was just impressed that I actually spent that much time trying to learn his stuff or whatever. And so myself and him, and he was a bass player, and then we had a drummer who was actually a drummer in a couple of local metal bands, and was actually like a legitimately good musician. I mean, both the other guy was too. I was like the one that was like, I can't believe they're letting me in the room with them. But the drummer was very like, he had a double bass pedal, and he was just like all this. And then our bass player, the original guy I was talking to, he was super like, just walked all over the place, whatever. And I had to try to keep up with it, So I was in a band with, we had a few members moving, coming in and out, but it was myself and that same bass player, the guy I originally met, from like 90, I'm going to say 92, maybe late 92 to like 96 or something like that. So I played with them for a few years, and we did like one like little US tour, and it was horrific, and blah blah blah. It was fun, but it was not, you're living off saltines, and you go into a Taco Bell, grab a handful of hot sauce, and walk out, and you're just like, eating saltines and hot sauce, and someone has like $10 in their wallet, they're like, motherfucker went and got McDonald's, and we don't have any money. That kind of thing. So it was that, and then I went to college in Chicago. So when I was there, that like the first band had kind of stopped playing, and then I started another band with a friend, and it was much more of the sort of almost grindcore, spastic, kind of style at the time, where like, I'd been at that point, of course, at all the classic kind of stuff I was describing metal wise before, death metal and classic metal and whatever. But then also was, I worked at a DIY venue that, had tons of everything, it was all different types of music, but a lot of like kind of crusty grind bands and stuff like that. So there's a lot of influence coming from there too. So we started a band that I wouldn't call it like a pure grind band or anything like that, but it was more definitely, there were like blast beats, slow ones, but blast, nonetheless. So we just, had that for a few years. That lasted 3 years. And then I joined another band that was like it was like 8 dudes in the band, but it was guys that were like, we're celebrating metal just as much as ridiculing it kind of thing. So like, we could say this because we love it, that kind of thing.
All right.
But we got put on, our bass player booked shows in Chicago, so everyone owed him a favor. So we got put on tons of bigger shows. So played at DSI, Suffocation.
Oh, okay, cool.
In, that era. This was like maybe 97 to maybe 2000 or something.
Right.
So, all the, at the time, House of Blues was new in Chicago. So it was just like, oh, the House of Blues. Oh my God, big deal, rock star stuff. Yeah. So I did that band for a while, and then all those bands that I was doing, because I was in 3 simultaneously because I had that time in my life at the time. Those all broke up for different reasons about at the same time. So one of those bands during our touring life, had met the guys from that band, The Locust, from San Diego. And two of those dudes, the original drummer, David Astor, and the original guitar player, Gabe Serbian, were in Cattle Decapitation. And, I think I had like their first LP or something like that. But coincidentally, with all these, my bands had broken up and they were coming, this Locust was coming through town. And I just hung out with them, was talking to them, and they're like, oh, hey man, since you're not doing anything, in the most Southern Californian accent you can muster. Hey man, you should come to San Diego. We'll start a rad band.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, I was like 24, 25 at the time, I think 25. And I was like, well, man, that's a big logistical, thing, go out there, cross country kind of move. But at that point, what do you have really tying you down? It's not,
Right.
So I was like, well, might as well. So I just went out there and, was all ready, like, okay, we got to do this band, we're going to start this band together. And, those guys were in 10 other bands. So they're at any point in their playing, they're in tons of different bands, beyond, there's their main band and they're all side projects. And so I thought I entered into that thinking, oh, okay, we're going to start this band. This is going to be our lives, this central band thing. I mean, they were in Locust, so obviously at that point, especially, they were doing really well. So I knew that was their baby, but this was going to be their other thing. And then I get there, and it was kind of very, oh yeah, man, we need to jam. That'd be cool. And then you just never do anything. So I'm like, damn.
Oh man, and you moved all the way across the country too.
Yeah, worked cross country, working at my temp job, making copies or whatever, and just sort of like, dang. And then one of them, Gabe played guitar and Cattle, so I got a call from one of those guys saying, the drummer, David Astor, and was like, oh yeah, we really want to get a second guitar player going. So you be down to try out? I'm like, oh yes, anything, please. Yes. Thank you. So it was myself, our old bass player, Troy, and then David Astor there. Travis didn't, he was busy or had some conflict. He didn't come, but I basically learned, granted these are the grindcore years for the band. So the songs were like, oh, this one's 1 minute and 20 seconds, So I just learned their songs, fairly competently, I think, when I met up with them and did that. And I was actually, pretty pleased with myself that I actually didn't completely train wreck the thing. And they're like, oh yeah, that was cool, man, but we'll give you a call. Okay. And then I didn't hear anything. And I was like, oh, I blow this. Did they get some like super shredder dude to come in and just make me look, I look sort of totally stupid up there. And Dave Astor was their drummer, or he was our first drummer or whatever. And so I just started blowing that dude up. I called him like he probably wanted to drive over and beat me up. I would call and it'd always go directly to the answering machine, or it would just ring off the hook. I bet I called him like, I don't know, like 30 or 40 times in 1 week. And then just like, okay, I'm gonna give a rest. Don't want to seem too anxious or over,
And then it's 60 next week.
Yeah, exactly. So I gave him I just give him a week off, and then I started calling again. And, this led to nothing. And I was like, kind of resigned myself. I'm like, all right, well, I guess that's not going to happen. So I just kind of started looking in the want ads and the free weekly, like, trying to find some, and that didn't really happen. Played with a couple people, but it was just more like, differing levels of seriousness. And then I got a call again saying from, I think, Dave Astor, saying, you want to try out again? I'm like, oh yeah, sure. Only do it at our practice space this time. Okay. So went over to the practice space, which was at Golden Hill in San Diego, South Park, and played with them. Played the songs that I had before, learned a couple others, and Gabe was there. So it was full band, and I was like pretty pleased with it. And they're like, "That sounds great, man. Yeah, let's do this. Sick, And then literally 2 weeks later, Gabe, kind of we got to do a band meeting, and I'm like, oh, I just joined this, but it seems kind of serious. All right, calls everyone into his room. He lived in the house in front of the practice space. So he kind of, everyone's all sort of somber, and calls in. He's like, yeah, guys, Locust is doing so well, and we're constantly being needed to do stuff. He goes, I don't want to hold you guys back and prevent you from doing what you guys want to do. Because at that time, Metal Blade was kind of courting us at that time. But really, remember Necropolis Records?
Oh yeah.
Necropolis. Yeah, Necropolis was. I mean, this is the time.
Or black metal kind of too, and death metal like.
Yeah, they had expressed a lot. Like Necropolis sent a contract, and Metal Blade was just starting to talk, to us and everything like that. So they're like, okay, stuff's gonna get serious. So his thing was like, I see this is getting more serious. He goes, I don't want Cattle to commit to something and then me at a clutch time have to go do Locust stuff. So right. I mean, it broke his heart because he was super, invested in that just as much as Locust. But he kind of, for him at the time, sort of wisely made that sort of choice, So it was just me. I was literally in the band with, 2 guitar players, vocal, bass, drum for like 2 weeks. We did that one practice, and then turns around, oh, you're the only guy now. Like, oh crap. So I went in and I learned all these other songs. They'd already written a bunch of songs for a new record, which would end up being To Serve Man, which came out in 2002. So it's like, learn all this stuff now. Okay. So I'd take these practice tapes home where you couldn't discern anything that was going on and just try to interpret what was happening, all that. But that was, I want to say that was like Labor Day time, 2001. And then, To Serve Man, I think we recorded that, I want to say in April 2002. So that was that. And then, 2003, David Astor left, and then we got Mike Lachlan, and then Troy left in 2009. We got Dave McGraw in 2007, late 2007, and then we're, Bell and Holly, and here we are, So.
Right.
So the interesting thing about it, Josh, is that you come into this band that is already, has a record out, and so, and then eventually you kind of take over the musical vision, I think, of the band. So was there, how was the transition into that, you writing, and was there a kind of did you have an idea how you wanted to take things? And
well, I mean, I was just kind of like with Serve Man, obviously I was just playing catch up. I just wanted to learn everything. I will have to say for say Humidor, which was 2004, and then Karma Bloody Karma, which was 2006. Those I think on To Serve Man I wrote maybe 2 riffs or something the entire, because I just was late in the game. With Troy Oftedal, for especially Humidor, he was Riff Factory for that. So I felt if we're doing percentages of the actual music, I'm not gonna sort of Mike Lachlan, obviously he played drums on that. He came up with more of a lot of the feel stuff we kind of worked with him on. So it's not like he very much contributed on that. But I think riff wise, I think Troy was maybe 60% and I was 40% on that record. And then Karma Bloody Karma, it kind of evened out a little more. Maybe I was 55 and he was, 45 or whatever. And then I think Harvest Floor, Dave McGraw joined just before Harvest Floor. I mean, Harvest Floor came out in 2009. He joined almost beginning of 2008, right? Late 2007. Right. so obviously his, playing and abilities kind of, we were just like, oh gosh, he could do all the cool stuff we want, or whatever, he can really do that. So I think Harvest Floor was almost more me kind of like, not, I should say going unchecked. Like they should have been a little more like, all that stuff, you don't need to do that, or whatever, I mean, obviously Troy wrote a bunch of stuff for that too, but I think that Harvest Floor was the first one where I was just like, all right, we got this riff and I got this riff and this can do this and this and this, and not trying to take over anything, but just kind of was just so full of so much like juice at that time to contribute that that I was just like probably just vomiting all this stuff out, that they were just like, okay, we got it, and I think that was the record that like it kind of like I felt that I kind of like, okay, here's my voice or whatever, I mean, of course, would I do stuff differently than I did? Absolutely. But like, it's just, I felt like, okay, here's my major creative contribution, what I want to say. So as far as directionally, like, I mean, I think the band's collective decision, or was like our thing, was like, okay, the band started, it was like, okay, a bunch of kids in kind of like spastic, grindy hardcore bands or whatever were always, yeah, they may be in those bands, but no, he's wearing a Cryptopsy shirt, or he's wearing a Napalm Death shirt. They're always at that thing. So we want to do that type of band. So they were doing that, and it ended up sounding not like that at all. But it was just like, here's the limit of our abilities, or able to execute that stuff. Here's where it is. And then once we got, after Metal Blade picked us up, it was the okay, we got to be serious now. So. And stylistically, we always wanted to do stuff more, serious death metal. So that there's this progression from Disturb Man to like, maybe, no, I'll give it to Harvest Floor, up to that point where you can definitely hear this, here, they're trying, properly, get this down. And then, Harvest Floor was, the first time I felt that we're like, okay, cool. We kind of got what we're doing, and, kind of can get, on a good trajectory here. So I think after that, from Monolith was 2012 to present day, we're just kind of like, I think a lot more secure in what we're doing. And it's, it's very ebb and flow creatively, I think as far as like contribution goes. Cause I mean, there's stuff that wouldn't sound the same if Dave wasn't there. Obviously there's stuff that wouldn't sound the same if Bell or Ollie wasn't there. And obviously he's evolved and developed such a unique vocal, signature
absolutely.
That, I mean, that's, I don't take any offense, and I totally understand where people go like, oh, that's how I identify your band. That doesn't make me feel, or I'm sure the other guys any less for like, oh, well, it's not my sick riffs or whatever. It's like, well, who do people identify with? It's just the front person, their vocals, whatever atmosphere that creates.
Well, Josh, I was going to ask, when you started taking over more of a role in or maybe a major role in the writing of the music and things like that, does the music, like the integrity of the band and the music, does it remain the same, or it kind of sounds like you all were kind of evolving as a band anyway? So maybe you kind of stepping up to the forefront kind of went along with that, I guess, maturation of the music in the band, right?
Yeah. No, I felt that I had not necessarily just interband expectations, but just sort of like, here's this ideal of where we want to be, and I have to try to live up to that. I'm, obviously, even now more so than ever, but even back then too, obviously, extremely competitive genre. So I would just see all these superhuman players and just people. I'm like, there's no way I could ever do that. Doesn't matter how much I practice.
Yeah.
So, but it's always like advancing by trying and not achieving what you want, or trying. So I'm like, just clawing. Okay, got a little bit better at this and that. It's still not here, or never will be. But I think all of us are doing that collectively, and we just, it was kind of, I would much rather have this sort of slower arc where, the band's it's like 3 different age groups in the band, but like at the age I am now, I'll say I'd much rather be, doing what we do at the level we do it than to have been a 25, 26-year-old and, at, that level. Because that would have been like, you're going to ruin this. Doesn't matter what. Or not ruin it, but just like everyone's going to change and just grow up as people and and not know how to, handle being an adult mixed with this lifestyle or this, profession and everything. And it's just, I don't know. I'm just happy in that regard to be.
Yeah. Well, it's your question too much. It really has been a journey for the musical evolution, because if you come up to the last record, it's kind of like you guys have like a melting pot that I hear of different influences that make something unique, because if people say, oh, well, what is cattle decapitation? And I to be honest with you, I don't know how to categorize you guys, because, and that's a good thing, because you guys kind of, you developed your own thing, your own voice, between your guitar playing and Travis's unique voice and Dave's drumming and now with Phil and Ollie, you guys have like
it's such a solid, like this push-pull of everyone's stuff. Like, I mean, here, I'll give you like, I mean, you can totally, and I know other bands are like this too, obviously, but you can go in and like, if you're listening to it, you go, oh, that's a total Bell riff, or, oh, that's a total so-and-so riff, or whatever, because I think like I originally, like, because I was the only guitar player for, from 2001, late 2001 until 2000 and, like 2016, the first record we did was Death Atlas with the 2 guitar players. So years and years, I had to kind of do everything at once. Like there was this whole like, oh, this might sound cool with a lead there, but live it's going to sound lame because the bottom's going to drop out and it's just going to be bass and this whatever. Or, oh, but I want to dumb it down and just follow the, the chunky part of this needs something. So I had these desires to do like, different layering or more textural or ambient stuff. And there's a couple times on the earlier records I would do that, but I knew not to get too far into it because it's like, well, it's going to sound stupid live if you have all this crap going on and then there's just me going,
oh yeah,
basically playing almost a rhythm part with it, or just playing the other part and then the rhythm's not there, the heaviness isn't there. So I just kind of over time, like when we added Bell and stuff like that, I was finally not allowed, but I was able to do that sort of thing. So definitely those parts and my approach to writing stuff with that sort of freedom has definitely kind of altered how I contribute stuff, like when I was just like mentioning yesterday with the plugins and doing that Reaper stuff, like most of the stuff that I'm doing, even if I'm not concentrating on like, oh, I've got to write X, Y, Z, whatever type of part, a lot of it's like going into it like, oh, this is definitely more of the sort of textural or ambient stuff, or like super aggressive, like dissonant black metal-y kind of riff or whatever, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Whereas as a guitar player, Bell's very much more like he said this, and you can totally tell too. He was a guy that like, I don't know if it was in high school or maybe college or whatever. He was like, I'm going to sit here and practice 8 hours a day and just go like, get like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And yeah, he's very much more of that sort of type of guitar player. So his riffs are more like, I don't know, they're just different. We just complement each other on what we do. You know what I mean?
That's good. That's a good thing.
Incredible bass player. And then Dave adds a lot of just atypical kind of like drum sort of stuff,
right,
to everything. And then Travis with his vocals, and he just kind of, he gets all the new material and then just has to try to piece together what the heck we're trying to convey and then come up with cool parts.
Right. Well, not to interrupt, but a little housekeeping thing. We have a few people watching us live. If you all have any questions, we're talking about music this week. we're not nerding out on gear yet. So if you have any questions,
please, soon enough.
Yeah, you're right. Well, I think sometimes like when we get too nerdy and the guitar stuff, people are like, they're not talking about music. Okay, we're talking about music. If you have questions, feel free to shoot a question to Josh. He's here. We're on a different date because he's in Europe, so we're not on our Thursday night. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat and I'll shoot them up on the screen. Sorry about that. Didn't mean to interrupt, but
no, all good. Yeah, I'd like to see.
I just wanted to point out we're not being too nerdy right now.
Oh no,
we're going to get there.
Nerdiness will come.
We're going to get nerdy. So that's what I'm saying. Like, if you want to get your music questions in, get them in now before the nerdum starts.
Well, you know, let's get into it then. You know, so speaking of gear and your rig, I think you got a really cool setup. I remember, you know, the last time we toured with you guys, you know, me and Bob would actually be kind of nerding out, checking out your setup, which we thought was really cool. With you know, you're using like you use Hiwatt, right?
Yeah.
In amps, and which I love Hiwatt, but it's not like the amp you would think of playing extreme metal.
Absolutely. And it's definitely like, it's not the traditional, it's a DR504 platform, but it's not obviously not what people usually use Hiwatt for, you know. It's that amp came out, I think 2018 at NAMM, and it was basically, you know, their sort of, you know, stab at like, well, we want to have an actual competitive not on price, but competitive high gain amp, you know, that's out there, you know, that is a content, you know, with everything. And so they had this guy, Key Meyer, who'd worked at Hiwatt for years, and was a metal guy, but, you know, did a lot of the wiring and stuff, and just was a builder there. Had him collaborate with Mike Fortin, who did it's basically almost like, oh, it's a modded Marshall, oh, it's a modded Hiwatt. I mean, he changed certain, you know, values, components and stuff to kind of accommodate that a little more. But that's basically all it is. It's, 3 gain stages with a switchable 4th gain stage, effects loop, really simple layout, which I love. I love that. I hate overly complex garbage that does nothing. You know,
Great.
Which I have a little hat theory on why that stuff is, you know, prominent now. But for high gain amps, I mean. But yeah, it's just 2 EL34s, 50 watt, very loud 50 watts, of course. The company that originally did the Hiwatt Transformers Partridge, they do not exist anymore, but I think they did one of those, like, you know, I know Mercury does them. It's not Mercury Transformers, but like they do the thing where they like tear apart an old transformer and count the, you know, the lines and everything like that, and basically reproduce exactly as that. So all modern Hiwatts have those reproduced Partridge style transformers, so they're true in that way.
Nice.
And yeah, it's just a great, like, I played it first at not necessarily looking for a new amp, but of course that's always how it works. Was it NAMM 2018, and played the thing, and I'm like, now I got to find money to buy this damn thing. You know, so I kept in touch with the Hiwatt rep, and, you know, got his card and everything, and just kind of like, oh, when are these coming out and everything? And he's like, okay, well, we'll put you down for one of the first however many. You know, I don't think it's not like something they cranked out 500 of them. It was more like, we'll put you down for one of the first 20, that kind of level of production. Right. And so I bought it and got it. Came to where I was living when I was on tour, actually. So I was, you know, kind of had to live like in the hallway with a neighbor for a bit. And then I got it, and then it's just been super into it ever since. You know, it's like Alex, you'd mentioned, it's like there's a level of cleanliness to it.
Yeah.
There's not that, and it's saturated, but it's not saturated in that kind of like overly dense, non-musical way. Like it's really like all Hiwatts. It's very much, it will tell you when you're having a bad day. Like it's very much, it's not, it's like, I love it, but it's a very much keep you honest kind of amp. It's really kind of a cruel mistress at times. It's really not having a good day. You're like, God, I'm awful, you know, that kind of thing. But it's fun to play, and just like, it's just tonally, it's great. So I mean, I'm super happy with it, and the guys at Hiwatt are awesome. They basically told me, like, after I bought it, maybe 3 or 4 months later, they were like, well, I got an email saying, hey, would you like to come on board here? I'm like, oh, yes, thank you, oh God, you know. And so they're after that, they kind of said, well, here's how we work things. You know, we, you know, the consumer is that into our product, and, you know, they make the commitment to buy it, and, you know, they're in a touring band, or, you know, has some sort of level of being out there. We kind of offer them that, and the sort of payoff for you guys is like, oh, are you on tour, like, coming up here, you know, later this month in Europe? Here's your amp. I basically have to pay for the like the shipping transit, you know, getting it to and from them. But yeah, it's free rental and whatnot.
Yeah.
So it's important to support, and they're just super cool. I actually have, because I totally need another one. Arv, that is the British, or it's the UK where they make them, the custom shop there. I've been talking to him. I was like, man, what if? Because originally I asked, or like everyone's asking, why isn't it 100 watts? And they're like, this thing doesn't need to be 100 watts. It's going to be unusable. Hold the phone. I need this thing to be unusable. Okay. So I asked him, I'm like, well, do you think this would work on like 100 watt? I mean, of course it would work, but would it sound okay or whatever? And he's like, well, let me talk to the guys in the shop, that kind of thing. So I basically said, okay, it's a as it is now, like what I have now, it's a 2-channel amp. I mean, it's single shared EQ, but there's 2 volumes, two master volumes, 2 gains. Okay. I was like, well, how about you just do 1 master volume, 1 gain, and then those 2 empty holes in the chassis, do like almost like a negative feedback control or something. It's like a resonance almost, that it's like a sag, like a loose, tight, you know, kind of thing, to where there's those, you know, things I can adjust. And everything else is fine. You know, there's like one component value I want to change, that just like a capacitance value or something, but whatever, you know. Other than that, 100 watts with these little things. And so I sent this, you know, long-winded email with all this like crap. And he's like, oh yeah, so okay, you know, it doesn't sound, I mean, it's nothing that's impossible. I'm not asking for ridiculous stuff. It's more just like literally, oh yeah, that's 1 wire here instead of there. You know, it's nothing.
Right.
So, because of the way Hiwatt is, you know, the ownership now is Canadian, but the custom shop's always where it's been in UK. So they sent it like from UK to Canada to get their guy there to see if they could do it there, since it's already over here, you know, in, you know, North America. So they're, last I heard is they had all the parts ordered, and they're going to kind of prototype it and see what happens. So it could be a train wreck. It could be like, oh wow, why didn't we do this earlier? I mean, it's not, I love the amp for what it is. It's not going to change the character of the amp. I'm not wanting something so different than what it already is. It's just like a couple little thingies and, you know, 100 watts. So it's unusable.
Yeah.
You know,
was there an interest with Hiwatt going back? Because like for me, I'm a huge Gilmore fan, and Pete Townsend as well. And I remember, you know, way back, you know, oh, David Gilmour's using Hiwatt, must be a great amp, you know. So was there any interest like going back that, you know, that led you into the?
Yeah, kind of like you said with Gilmore and Pete Townsend and stuff like that. I was just like, oh, Hiwatt, okay, that's another. But I think, you know what, when I started going to more guitar stores, that was after, you know, David Reeves died in like 1982, and then he didn't have like any sort of like, I don't say either a will or like any sort of thing in place to basically what company is or who owns this company now. He wanted to give it to his children, but he didn't have anything legally in place, so they basically gave it to the employees, or the courts over there put it in the employees' hands. And so they maybe had it, I want to say Buy a Crown was their name. I mean, it was Hiwatt, but like Buy a Crown was like their sort of company name during that time. They had it for maybe 3 or 4 years, and then they sold it off. And then it was Wild West from like maybe mid 80s up until I want to say mid 2000s. It was, for a while, they made them in Fresno, you know, weird. You know? And so all these different eras, you know, I mean, true, you know, OG Hiwatt enthusiast freak out people are like, oh, if David Reeves wasn't in the room when it was made, it's not real, you know, that kind of thing. And I'm like, well, but yeah, they only want the late 60s up to maybe 1981, 82 Hiwatts. Anything after that, regardless if it's made exactly the same way in UK in a custom shop, that doesn't count. Okay, fine. But they had a lot of years there where it was just like, what is this brand? So I remember kind of like seeing them in music stores, probably late 80s, maybe early 90s. And they were just, that's after whatever company had bought them had sent basically most of the production to China. So it was like or overseas. I'm not going to say, you know, China like any sort of negative connotation. I'm just saying it was overseas production, and it was all just practice amps. Like you get the little Hiwatt, and I'm like, I saw Pete Townsend, David Gilmour, and others, playing these. I'm like, oh, it was like when Marshall reintroduced Park and did them as practice amps.
Right.
As opposed to the amazing Parks from like the late 60s, early 70s, so I had that same collective mindset, of like, oh, what's this cheap kind of thing now? What did this come evolved into? Well, I think in the 2000s, the Harrisons from Music Ground bought them, and they were like, we're going to make this like it was. Here's this production facility in Doncaster, all original hand-wired, mil-spec, everything exactly like it was. Okay, great. Well, those guys were the ones that got busted. There's a father and son. I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, doing the relicking of guitars and passing them off as like, oh, this is Keith Richards' Telly from 1961 Telly, blah, 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 and selling them $10,000. It was all fake. So I think there were other things involved. It wasn't just fake guitars relicking or something.
Right.
Father and son are still in jail, if I'm not mistaken, in the UK. And during that whole, usurping of everything, I don't know if the court, you get to dissolve this company or whatever. So they're selling off the assets. And that's when I'm pretty sure that the current owners of Hiwatt, the Canadian guy, Alex, came in and bought it. And so since 2000, I want to say 15, 16 maybe, he's owned it. Custom shop, all UK. So all the classic DR504, 103, T2, the couple of the combos, the bigger cabinets and stuff like that. Those are all made there. Prior to that, they had a huge, or not huge, but like their Chinese stuff or the overseas stuff was way more prominent in their line. Now it's whittled down to like maybe 3 or 4 models, some tubes, some solid state.
Right.
But their main focus is still the custom shop. So they've been running that for the past, like probably 10 years or so. And they're great. And I'm happy to be working with them. They're really
it's a good business model. Do them well, right?
Yeah. And I mean, I know it's kind of like they've had to really fight for their image back, because understandably, there's a lot of people such as myself, when I kind of was reintroduced to them, that it was like, oh, it's just, they sold off everything. It's all this overseas junk and it's just practicing, whatever. And so despite you can tell people or, show them whatever and just be like, no, here's this series of events. This is where we're at now. And it's like, but that's all that overseas junk. I'm like, well, no, so it's hard to change perception. And then you have the folks that are, like I said, anything made after 1982 is fake, Hiwatt.
Right.
So, right. So you're not going to, you can't win. So I'm not trying to. So it's very much, you like it or you don't. And I'm super happy with it, So hopefully
we have our first question. It's kind of funny because I got us off before the podcast even started, I got us off on this next question, I think. Happy New Year's to you, Cheech. Good to have you with us today. Josh, has living in Germany attracted you to any certain German guitars and gear? It goes down to what you were holding when I got us off topic before we even started.
Oh no, all good. I think I actually used to have early 2000s. I had an Engel Fireball, so that was like the first German item I had. And I of course have heard of Diesel and all that, but those were super expensive. So I'd played at a Herbert in like I think 2003 or something like that, and it was like, this is incredible. I can't afford that. It was like holy crap. But so there was that awareness, and that stuff was on my radar. Guitar wise, no. But since I've been here, there's which is since the beginning of early 2023. I kind of heard a little rumblings before, but for their pedals, but this brand Lichtlaerm, and actually he's based in Berlin here, the builder Daniel. I met him maybe earlier 2024, and hung out with him, everything like that. And I now own a couple of his pedals. They're in heavier, but I got a couple of his things. There's a noise gate I have, and one of these, which is like kind of like a sort of like an ambient, like delayed kind of cool reverby thing. And yeah, so I kind of like got in contact with him, and he's been super friendly, and he's a very busy person, so we keep trying to hang out, and it's always these sort of, just never meets up again because everyone's just like, busy living life. So
right.
But yeah, he's a good dude, and he was very generous to me, with some of those pedals. So, and he also has an amp he put out last year called the Prometheus, which is a kind of gaining a lot of popularity. Like he's barely able to keep up with the orders and everything like that, because it's just him and I think the guy that are just doing all the wiring and stuff. Like he makes the pedals there and does a lot of some of the head work, but I think someone maybe bends the chassis for him and makes the head shell somewhere else. So it's this whole thing. But yeah, he's a really good dude, and actually when I had the Hiwatt I borrowed last time for last tour beginning of last year, it was quite a battle to get it sent back to UK or whatever. So I had been getting in contact with him, and he was like, "Oh man, hey, you know what? I see the DHL guy all the time. Bring it over here, and I'll ship it for you, and you can just PayPal me the money or whatever." Okay, cool. And the the positive thing for him is he always wanted to check out that amp, but hadn't been able to. So,
right. Yeah.
So he I took it over there, and we, are farting around and everything like that. And he was like, "Before I send it back, I'm just going to a couple days, just give me a couple days with it to play around with it." And so, at the time he was, they were doing tracking, for their record, which is actually going to come out probably pretty soon. They did Dave Otero mix, but they did a lot of the guitar tracking here in Berlin. And he told me, he contacts me after he had the head, and he's like, "I had to do a couple more tracks of that head, man, because that thing just sounds so amazing." I'm like, "Oh, cool," So his head, I got to play it briefly, but it was with one of the guitars he had there, so I was kind of like not super comfortable. But I want to take one of mine over there and just fiddle with it, because it's really really killer sounding head, a little bit very in the modern tip, but without a bunch of unnecessary stuff. So I really appreciated that. It was not stripped down at all, but just very smart, intuitive, practical controls, and not just a bunch of junk, So
yeah.
So there's him, and there's a guy called I haven't met him, Lenz amps, Lenz, who I'm kind of interested in those. Not once again, I'm not trying to buy anything, but I really want to just out of curiosity. It sounds really cool. He's got a it's a very stripped down, 6 controls, but super aggressive sounding amp. So just, I always got to try, see what you think and all that. But yeah, aside from that, I guess there's a boutique guitar, kind of more modern guitar company in the neighborhood that we live in, which is Wedding here in Berlin. And I have not seen them yet, but I guess they're within a few blocks of where I live now. I just don't know where they're at. So,
well, what I was getting at is the Harley Benton that sidetracked us. That's what I was talking about. What I sidetracked us with. What do you think of them? That's Thomman, right?
It's not bad. I remember there was some guy online that was in I think he was almost like a session musician for kind of a bigger artist, and he was the guy. And I think I want to say his daughter had a Harley Benton or something like that. Yeah. Like a Strat style, whatever. Yeah. And I think his thing was you know what? I'll maybe do some modifications to the electronics, just literally wiring, not anything adding preamps or anything like that. Right. Because I'm going to take this thing stock, have my guy set it up, and I'm going to do the tour with this guitar. Yeah. I'm going to do a tour with a $150 guitar or euros or whatever, and I'm not going to, take my usual Sadowski or whatever he's got, Right. And he did the entire tour with it, and he's stayed in tune, sounded really good. Mm-hmm. Yeah, granted, I had this incredible setup from my guy, but stock everything. I didn't mod anything out, and it's great. So, I've did my best on trying to give her a little setup, because she was complaining about it being hard to play. Because it'd been, she hadn't had it for a while before us coming back to Berlin. It was in a basement, so it went through all those climate changes and everything like that. So the action at the time was basically almost set up for slide. So I had to and do everything. But I'm not claiming to be a very good setup person, but at least it plays now decently. Yeah. And so it's kind of my little fun guitar that sits next to the couch, and I can just plunk out stuff on. Yeah. And then bring out my other one for when I want to kind of plug it in up there, and really
I think for the money, I mean, you talk about, when I was younger and first starting, how much guitars cost and what we would get, and everybody's getting Hondos and all that kind of stuff. But you take a Hondo from my era when I was a kid starting out, and a Harley Benton. The Harley Benton is 5 million times better.
Oh, yeah.
Dude, just super sleeper guitars,
Yeah. When I think of like cheap entry-level guitars back, 80s or whatever, it was just garbage. And now it's like with minor, just get a good setup with these, and it's still like, maybe you'll change out the pickups or something like that. Maybe.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's weird when I was working with a luthier down in Virginia Beach, and he hadn't heard of them, and it was a weird coincidence. Like the first day I was in his shop, 2 came in, and I had never seen one in person. And he was going over, what are your goals and this week working with me and all that. And I said, well, what my one goal is, and the one Harley Benton had just come in, I said, he had a really expensive guitar hanging on the wall that he had just done. I said, my goal is to have that Harley Benton play as well as that expensive guitar on the wall. And it was close, really close.
Yeah.
It's like they're solid.
Yeah.
It's really impressive. And, Alex, I talk to you a lot when we're geeking out about the Paul Reed Smith factory. You want to know what's super impressive is that factory in Germany. Man, I mean, environmentally, the business side of it. There's, I was trying to Google it a minute ago, but I'm getting old and I can't remember shit when I'm on a podcast. But Thomman, the major maker the guitar that they make, the high-end guitar and bass.
That Thomman makes? Is it they make it that's German?
I think it's made in that plant.
Framus?
The same one that does the
Framus.
Framus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm telling you what, there's a couple tours that some podcasters have done in that factory over there. Watch those. It's super impressive the way that so it's environmentally clean, the whole process. Their wood library is phenomenal. Their just factory process is phenomenal. They're building good stuff, and I think the Framus is, since it's the same place basically, it's kind of bleeding over into the Harley Bentons.
I think
that's why they're getting so good. I think
companies that they also do Warwick too.
Warwick,
Warwick,
Framus,
Warwick is the same people.
Yeah.
Because there was, what was that ant brand? Oh, duh! What am I talking about? I have to think. What brand was it? The Framus Cobra and when they made it.
Right.
I was thinking it was something separate. Okay, yeah. So there was under one roof kind of thing there. But I think it's pretty. It's a lot of funny thing is like I was mentioning before with some of the stuff I do with cattle is a little more like the textural ambient kind of stuff.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
This is where a lot of it's written on. This
really?
We're sitting here having coffee in the morning, and she has to listen to me do this sad crap over and over and over and over. So.
Well, and that's what caught my eye is I've heard your music, and then when you first popped in to the podcast, I saw a Strat next to you. I was like, okay, I wasn't picturing that.
Oh yeah. That's just it's not for, I don't want to say for years. Like it's funny. I had a former bandmate, and we would always, this is probably like late 90s or whatever, kind of clown on like Fender stuff, like, oh, Strat and a Bandmaster, it's the suck loop, or whatever. Fast forward, kind of stuff. And it's like, not that I'm still not, I found some Fenders that I think are great. I'm not really a Fender person or whatever.
Right.
But I don't know. Amp wise, I'm definitely super open. I think that some of their amps are fantastic.
Yeah.
And then, guitar wise, like I actually have, like the Sam from Cardinal, him and I have a couple projects, actually, a few technically. But the one that's probably the closest to, being, realized and, executed right now is it's not Fender style, but it's kind of a very loose telly kind of shape,
Oh.
So it's very much his aesthetic, but I was like, wanting something, another, trajectory change here or whatever. But I very much wanted something. I was like, I want like a guitar that's literally one bridge pickup.
Yeah.
That's it. Maybe just a kill switch. That's it.
Yeah.
And yeah, might as well make it Tele, because those Teles are very much keep you honest guitars. And
they seem to be making a comeback.
What's that?
They seem to be making a comeback.
Oh yeah. And even though I'm cheating by having a humbucker in it it's still there's nowhere to go. There's no neck pickup to go to be all slippery, slidey, and smooth. It's like pink, So I was kind of like, hey, this is a guy I want to do it. I have a great relationship with Sam, so I love his guitars. So I was like, he can put his samples on do it. So
let's get into the company actually you work with your guitarists you're using, because they're really unique. And kind of take us through, because I think you told me before it's a luthier in Nashville that's making those guitars.
Austin. Yeah, he's he's actually, let me grab it right now.
Yeah, check it out, man.
See, all the people that want to see music, they lost their chance. They should have asked questions.
Exactly.
They didn't. And all we did was you need one little segue into nerd stuff, and we're there.
Yep.
They had their chance.
Yeah. So this is the one Alex is definitely familiar with. This is one of his, or at least the shape. He has an east and a west. This is the east, which are the solid bodies. The west is like a chambered, not semi-hollow, but chambered body. He just started, I think, making guitars maybe mid 2000s or 2004, 2005, after working in a different field for 25 years or whatever. And then he finally convinced his wife to let him, I'm going to make guitars now. Okay.
Nice.
But, 20 years almost, or pretty much at 20 years, he's been doing that. So,
wow.
Yeah, he's based out of Austin. I met him at an amp show in Austin, 2010, I want to say. Or an amp show. Like my buddy Adam from Satellite Amps in San Diego was exhibiting there. We drove from San Diego to Austin, and we're just showing off the amps and everything. And this guy wanders in, Sam from Cardinal, and it was a different model than this, but he's literally holding it, not in a case or whatever. He's just like walked in, and we're like, oh, okay, here's this guy. Okay. And it's a very different model than this, like I said, but interesting looking guitar. And so we kind of the noise died down a little bit. And so we, introduced ourselves and blah, blah, blah. And, he's like, oh, this is my model, the Zenith, Cardinal Instruments is what I do. Check it out if you want. So we just sat down with it. It was like very familiar, but like had modern playability, like as far as speed goes, but it was a very classic feel. It felt just like an actual guitar. It didn't feel like some of the modern guitars that feel like they're like dipped in like plastic or something like that. This feels like a hunk of wood. I mean, literally like a hunk of wood, right? But just feels like, not that it was roughly hewn, especially the one that he brought. It was very, very svelte and, like beautiful curves on it, and everything. Right. This one's more like, not angled, but just more like blockier than that one. Right. But yeah, it just felt like a real instrument. I feel like you're actually, I'm playing a piece of wood and it's responding. I'm feeling the resonance and all that. It was just a super organic, sort of thing, experience or whatever. So, we chatted with a few minutes and he's like, all right, nice to meet you guys. I'll see you later. Here's my card. Hit me up sometime if you'd like. Okay. So, a few months passed. My friend Adam, contacted him and he said, oh, Sam said if you ever want to, hit him up. Okay. So I sent him an email or just some friend, some social media thing. And yeah, he hit right back and we were chatting and he goes, hey, if you ever want me to build you anything, man, I'll kind of hook it up a little bit. And that was 2010. And I was like, once again, I don't need another guitar, but okay. So I was just like, I asked him, it wasn't this model, or it was this model, but it wasn't this guitar, but I had him make me one, and like 6 months later or whatever, I got it, and it's an incredible instrument. Like it's actually, it's just beautifully made. It's like, it's literally, I can't describe it anymore. That it's like you're holding 2 pieces of wood. It sounds like the stupidest way to just, like describe it, but it's just like it feels so substantial and just translates, everything, So maybe a year, 2 after that, year and a half after that, I kind of told him, I love this guitar, but I don't want to take it on the road. It's scary. It's a beautiful guitar and blah, blah, blah. And it was just an excuse to get another guitar, of course. So I told him, I was like, well, I appreciate, you really thank you for, giving me a nice, a buddy discount or whatever on the first one. But, I just want something it's like a Tele. You can throw it down the stairs. Oop, the G's out of tune. Oh, it's perfect. It's like you can beat it up, whatever.
Yeah.
I basically give me the big lots version of what you do, which of course is, but you know what I mean. Like, give me the not gnarly, tricked out, everything on 10 version. So he's like, well, you know what I can do? I have a guitar that hasn't sold in 2 years. I know you love humbuckers, so I can route it for humbuckers and blah blah blah. And he goes, oh, of course I'll do the neck for you, ground up. But I can basically use pre-existing stuff. Just I'll use whatever pickups you want and whatever your bridge of choice is. Right. And he goes, you'll be very happy. He goes, you're gonna get in a blowout deal for this one. Okay. So that's what this guitar is. And I've used this on every Cattle recording since I got it, which has been the past 3 records. So since 2000, I got it 2013, but I used it. The first record after that was 2015. So the past 3, it's been on everything. And we've tried this guitar and versus the other Cardinal I have. Beat him in the studio, and for some reason or whatever, David Otero was just like, dude, this is the one, man. There's something about that guitar that, like, he was the special.
Just the other one. Hearing you strum on it, I can hear the resonance in that guitar.
It's great. Like, defined. Everything's really like the note separation is really good, and it's just like, it's like there's a stringiness to it, but not in a offensive way. Right. Because usually I take that to mean like there's a negative, like, oh, it just sounds really stringy and sinewy, but not in a pleasant way. It's just real. Right. This is like, that's to this one. It's like just definition. You hit the string, it's like you hear the string. You don't hear just this.
What pickups did you have put in it?
This is a Suhr Aldrich match set. In these, so those are like 17 1/3, I think. Hotness.
Right.
The hotness scale.
The heat.
The heat on those. So it's output or whatever. And it's kind of like, I think Doug Aldrich had those commissioned or whatever with Suhr as like a more aggressive and like bigger low end JB.
Right. Okay.
So I think it's an Alnico 5 magnets in it, just a hollow wind, and I think actually JB is probably about comparable wind wise, so it's not higher output. It's just whatever their pickup magic and recipe is, results there. So
you get that kind of resistance with the Alnico 5 in it. It's going to be a little gnarly for sure.
Yeah. I actually asked them. This has been a year and a half by now, and it may like upset the balance, the happy medium of everything. But I was like, what if you put an Alnico 8 in there? That might be too much of too much. It's like you don't need that. But so that was a question I posed to them, and the guy originally was like, "Oh yeah, we'd totally do that." But it's been long enough to where it was post-COVID, where they're like, "Oh, we don't have." I wonder
what that would sound like. Do you know what kind of wire he's using? What gauge? Is it 42 or 43?
Oh, I don't know what the gauge wire is in those.
I would do it. I'll have to do it one time and see what it sounds like with the 8.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of good things about this. Aldrich.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was saying I've heard a lot of positive feedback about those Doug Aldrich pickups actually. And,
they're great. Like, I love them. I just like they just sound like, I don't know, they just sound mean. They just sound angry.
Yeah.
It's like, there's heavier, like more low mid focus pickups, but it's tight enough, and it's like, it's like, once again, like I said before, like way back, it's like the mids. It's just that has this very angry mid sound,
We have another question. Is that the most commonly used guitar in your collection on tour or in the studio?
Yes. Yeah. This guitar in particular has been since Anthropocene Extinction, which came out in 2015. I think for at least my parts before, Bell did his stuff on his, this has been, everything. I think I had my other Cardinal I used on some layering, and like there's one lead or something I used it on, but this has been everything. Like, and then that's been everything for my parts. And then Bell's a ESP LTD person, so he has his stuff that he uses.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's
what are the specs on that? What is the body and the neck on that?
This is all ribbon mahogany. The same, not the same piece, but
I like it.
Yeah, it's nice. It's. I mean, there's like the belt buckle rash and much. But just like the little scars and stuff. But I mean, that gives it character. I mean, look how gross that top is. That's disgusting.
It's awesome.
Yeah. It's a copper, like a thin copper, not a veneer. It's thicker than that. It's like a sheet, but it's a really thin sheet.
Yeah.
It's kind of comes up. It doesn't really come
up.
up.
I can see it. Beautiful.
Yeah. And all this sort of figure is not really figure. I mean, when I got this thing, like he treated it with it was like a chemical treatment. Like he stripped it off and kind of did one of these and left it outside for a few days or whatever. And it had all this really cool, like sort of chemical reaction, like figuring. Yeah. And he told me, he's like, well, you want me to seal it? Because I can. It'll be pretty forever in that way. He goes, or I can just let it be organic. And you might lose some of what the initial prettiness, but it'll evolve. And I'm like, just let it breathe, and don't seal it. So
good choice.
Yeah. So I mean, this green, that's all. It's like copper. So it's like you get the cheap ring on vacation when you go to Six Flags and bring it back to your high school girlfriend. Yeah, that's what that is. That's gross. Cheap. It's just oxidization.
It looks like I don't know if you've seen like an old gold top 55 Les Paul that kind of
greens out. Yeah.
And then there's like pick scrapes from me flailing about, and then I think
flailing about.
And then there's like kind of spattery stuff, which is probably me sweating, and then this is gross, kind of slack jaw drooling. I'm serious. It's embarrassing, but no. And then there was actually, it got worn away, but it was down here, obviously on the part where like this kind of happens. There was blood from when I think Travis like busted his lip or something, and then of course he dumps water on himself, and headbangs, and so it was just a spatter of diluted blood water. So I had spatters from his blood on here for a while, but and then this is obviously as I destroy my guitar.
Is that a Godo Wilkerson bridge?
What's that?
Is that a Godo Wilkerson bridge?
Yep.
Those are good.
Oh yeah, I love these. And then this right here is from like summer touring where you're just sweating all over the place and just drips down. That's what that is. Yeah. It's a EVO tuner. EVO frets. I don't think they actually make those anymore, but
oh no, God, the worst thing they stopped making those. That's the worst thing they did.
Is that an ebony board that you have on there, Josh?
Pardon? What's that?
Is that ebony, the board? Or is that rosewood?
Yeah, it's like a really dark rosewood. Yeah. And probably just human filth has kind of made it darker, but
Alex, you can't tell very well in the camera, but the frets are gold, right? Evo Gold.
Yeah, they're kind of that it's kind of a gold. Yeah.
Oh man, I love those frets.
Yeah, the new project. I said, oh, we're gonna do the EVOs again, and he's like, love to, but so, and these are actually pretty high frets too. That was another thing I had to really retrain myself on, because when I first got this, I'm all like, I got the first show I'm doing with it, so I'm all just up there like, line checking everything, and it was all, like a little bit out of tune. I'm like,
it gets a little sharp.
I'm freaking strangling the guitar neck, and I'm, it's not that they're like scallop tight, but it's just like I'm pressing down way too hard, because I had like 6105s forever, so you can kind of do that a little more. Yeah. So I had to really like readjust like my left hand technique to not strangle the dang thing. Right. Yeah. Right. So but I mean, I asked him about it, and he's like, no, they no longer make them.
Yeah.
which is a shame. So I don't know. I'm
Hopefully,
sure we'll get the same
fingers
type.
crossed. I wish I would have bought some. Dumb story. I had somebody come in. This has been a few years ago, and he said he wanted gold fret wire, and it was a pretty affordable guitar, pretty low end guitar. So I said, all right, well, I go down to Virginia Beach and work with this guy out. I'll take it down there. I wanted to do a refret with him. Like I said, it was years ago. So I did a refret on a low end guitar with EVO Gold material for the cost of the material. I just to do it. And so he has a pretty low end guitar with frets that you can no longer get.
Wow.
And now I'm like, damn, I wish I had that. I wish I would have bought it, like stocked up on it.
Yeah.
Hopefully they'll get the materials and start making it again. Yeah, it's cool stuff. So it's kind of like stainless steel frets, only gold, Alex.
Okay.
A lot like that. It's just a cool material, and the company or the material it's made out of, they had a shortage, whatever. Happened like another pandemic thing.
Yeah,
I'm a big fan of stainless steel frets. You have any experience with trying out stainless steel frets in any guitars, Josh? Or
I mean, I just had in some of my other guitars, they were just the regular. What are they usually, nickel or something like that? Or
nickel.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure, because I had in like maybe mid 2000s to like early 2010s, I had a couple guitars from a guy in San Diego that were basically Warwick guitars, or like parts guitars that he would just mod crazy and really sweeten up. Great guitars. So those were just standard whatever. I don't know if they have an upgrade for different fret material or fret wire materials or anything like that. So they were just a standard Warwick material, whatever that is.
Right.
Yeah. I find the stainless steel, it's like it's smoother, and it actually, I think it changes the tone a little bit. It's a little bit, maybe makes things a little bit brighter sounding.
I guess brighter.
You probably agree with that.
I think so.
Yeah. What in your experience, like relative, because I like the EVO or the EVO, whatever, these sort of frets, how do you?
They're very similar. I think they're very similar in the what do you want to say? Like how rigid or how hard they are. Like the stainless steel frets are super hard. It's a super hard material, and the EVO is about the same. Working with it is like working with stainless steel.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they're very, very similar. Except for the gold is way better looking.
Oh yeah, no, it's gorgeous.
I know I keep harping on it. That's only because I'm kicking myself in the ass for not buying some.
Oh yeah, I'm sure a ton of people feel exactly the same way. Like
had a lot. I know somebody that was he kind of caught wind that they were going to do away with it, and he bought a roll of it.
Oh, geez.
So he's a luthier. I wish I would have done the same thing. So
yeah.
Hindsight's 2020, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, I'll have to figure out. I mean, sure, the same fret height or whatever, because I gotten used to this, but it'd be
right.
I'd have to figure out something else, whatever the new emerging.
Oh yeah, it's stainless, and I'm sure eventually somebody's going to do that again. And it was, I think the company was Jesgard that was doing it. So I'm sure it's not one of those things where we'll never see it again. But it's interesting what you said. The higher frets and pushing down harder. I know exactly what you're talking about. I don't know why, but whenever I play a Les Paul, doesn't matter what Les Paul it is, I do it every time, and I sharpen the note every time when I play a Les Paul. I don't know why. Like I feel like I have a need to drive the string right through the fretboard. I don't know why.
Yeah, there's some live videos like looking back, and I'm like, there's certain parts of the song I'm like, yep, I totally dug in way too hard on that, because there's that minute that second of beating between the two guitars.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, I don't know if it's for you, Josh, but over time, I kind of like, because I always was like a real hard player, and over time, I've kind of like taken things a step back and a little bit lighter, because I find that I can kind of make things a little bit more articulate and flowing more rhythm. Kind of playing a little bit lighter and instead of just bashing the shit out of the guitar.
Absolutely. Like I have those picks. I use the Dava picks. I use the nickel tip one, and I mean, I've used those since like 2007 or whatever. But I was noticing, like, granted, nickel's not super like rock hard or anything, but still, I was like, man, I'm kind of wearing these things down pretty quick. Or quicker than, because they were basically like, they were saying like, oh, dude, these will last for years. That's the reason they're so expensive, or at least that nickel one, you know. And then I'm like, man, I'm like, yeah, I mean, these last way longer than regular picks, but I'm still kind of wearing these things down. And then I had to be like, oh, well, maybe you don't need to dig in like you're trying to kill your guitar, you know.
Yeah.
So just like you'd said, I'd like kind of like realized that, or not, well, yeah, realized, and then kind of like re-examined how I play certain things. And especially with that, like, since it's the nickel tip, like you barely have to do anything, you know. So it's like, yeah, you can play a lot faster and have more stamina, and you're not just blowing your wad, like hitting as hard as you can. Yeah, it probably looks cool, sounds maybe like crap because I'm hitting so hard and, you know, screwing things up. But it like, it really, it makes me reevaluate. It made me reevaluate, like, not, it doesn't mean you have to dig in, like, just, you know, do this barely like hummingbird stuff, but you don't have to murder your guitar. You know, you can actually play it. So it took me a few years to figure that out. I'm still figuring that out. So
you mentioned the Dava pick. Do you have one near you?
Yeah, let me.
Because I use one of those, but I've never heard of the. You said it was stainless, the stainless tip.
It's a nickel tip.
Or nickel. I'm sorry.
Yeah, they have a few different ones.
You know, I'm such a dumbass. Whenever somebody holds something up, I look up like I'm gonna see it.
Oh, yeah.
I do it every week.
Down here.
Oh God.
It's it's pretty much what it is. It's got this the thing with the Dava, their whole little kind of their I don't know.
Is it the rubber handle also?
They do have some that are rubber, and they're kind of like in this sandwich sort of thing. When there's like ones with tips, there's like nylon, Delrin, that whole thing. Some nylons or whatever. But with this one, this type, they have like I think 3 or 4 different types of picks. This one is actually not hold it over here, hold it in front of the camera. This is just like a hard plastic and it's flexible. So understandably, if someone picks this up for the first time, they're gonna go, "Oh, this is too thin." I'm not like doing some acoustic, you know, Fender thin kind of thing. It's like, well, their whole, I don't want to say philosophy or like design philosophy is like, you'll grip it closer to the tip and that adds stiffness, which seems kind of hokey. Like, well, how am I going to I'm not going to think on the fly, like, oh, I better grip it here. I don't know what it is, but it's completely intuitive. You don't have to think about it at all.
I'm going to try those.
I'm playing stuff where I need more stiffness. So I'm not, you know, moving from here to here all the time. It's usually just anchor myself and do my thing. But it's really like, I don't know. I don't know if it's just something about this nickel one. Like I've had these since the beginning, but these weren't the ones I used at first. I think maybe like 2013 or 14 started like, I think I ran out of my other ones. I'm like, oh, I got the nickel one. I guess I'll try that one again. And then just kind of fell in love with it, you know? So every time I grab another pick or have something else and I'm like, oh, I'll try this for a while. I may like them, but then I come back to this one. I'm like, well, you get in your weird, like playing superstition live, like, oh, this is one I use live. I can't do anything different, you know, or everything will be wrong. So I grab this one again. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. It feels like it's just.
Now I'm going to use a highly technical term here, but is it grippy? That's my technical term, grippy.
It's one of those, it has those little, I can't see it. I don't know how well, but it's got these little kind of striations in it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see it.
Yeah. Okay. I see it. Yeah. That's it.
And I mean, I was pretty good about dropping picks in the past. This one, knock on wood, I'm sure I'll drop in the next show.
We just jinxed you.
I know, I screwed myself on that one.
Yeah.
I don't really drop these. And plus I don't have to, you know, obviously sitting here casually is different than playing live, you know.
Sure.
I'm always like live or whatever. But it's not something that I've gotten all slippy with. There are other ones, the rubber ones, those have the same sort of gripping, like those 3 kind of, once again, those 3 little lines there.
Yeah.
But they also have like around the back of the pick, there's these kind of rubber nubs that are, and then the Dava logo or whatever. But they're not undroppable, but they're hard to they're hard to
try that. I use those. I also use gravity once in a while, and I tried to use something that has a little more grip in it because for some reason I'm not a bricklayer, but I have bricklayer hands. They're like super dry and super hard, so I'm always dropping stuff or it turns around sideways. So I like the rubber grip that the Dava picks have, but
yeah,
I'm gonna have to try those. I didn't know about the metal tip on
yeah.
it.
I mean, try these. I mean, it's one of these things. It's like, it's definitely not for everyone. You know, I could definitely see, like, it's just, you know, I've had people try it and they're like, cool for you and all, but it's not my thing. Cool, totally get it. You know, but there's other ones. There's one actually. I was just actually strangely enough talking to Tim from Dava earlier today because with that tour coming up, I want to order more picks. Blah blah blah.
Right.
There's another one they have that's of their grip tip line, which is the rubbery ones I was describing, and it's called like the Power Pick or something. But it's, I could have sworn the former owner designer from Dava, who's since passed away, he, every time I'm in Albuquerque, that's where they're located. Tim Garcia comes out. And it's like, oh, I got some new picks we're kind of working on. Who knows if they'll actually be in stores, but we're just screwing around. And there was one that was this rubber, you know, the rubber grippy part. That's technical again.
Right.
And the tip, I could have sworn, because the original Dave Story, the original fellow who passed away, he was very much into experimenting with tips and, you know, all these different materials. And I could have sworn he's like, well, this one's like a ceramic tip. I'm like, oh, okay. And since the picks are made in like a sandwiching type of procedure, they can put a new tip in, sandwich, make a bunch of them out, so they can experiment. You know, so they do this whole ceramic, or like what I thought, whatever, recollect as being a ceramic. I remember getting that and it was like, oh man, this is amazing. You know, it wasn't this, you know, the nickel, but it was just like still super firm and just like, oh, I can rip with this thing. And so I was talking to him earlier today about that. I'm like, do you remember way back when you gave me this one that was like a ceramic tip? Dave was experimenting with it and, you know, this and that. And he kind of was just like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Kind of thing. Which I don't blame him. You know, it's because apparently from what I gather, that guy, the founder.
He says, I can't read it. I don't cuss. Actually, I cuss a lot. I was a firefighter. I start and end every sentence with the F word. He said that's fucking cool. I think he's talking about the Dava picks.
Oh yeah, the cheese
popped up earlier.
Good, yeah. So actually, it's like he's like, well, the closest thing we have down to that was called like the Power Grip or something like that, whatever. So that's like, aside from the nickel tip, kind of further to what you were discussing about wanting the more rubbery style. If you do like, you know, really either stiffer or just really firm tips, the Power Grip is probably the one you want.
Right. I'm gonna have to try it. I'm gonna order them.
They do a variety pack where you can get like one of each, and just they do like Jazz 3 style, and they do like, you know, the more traditional.
You know, it almost gets comical because guys will come in here to pick up their guitars and they'll sit down and go, "Do you have a pick?" And I have this whole thing of like every pick known to man, because I think I've tried them all, especially, you know, non-grippy, grippy. You know, the ones that are kind of sandpapery. It's like I said, it's almost like having sandpaper hands.
Oh yeah.
Which is good. I tell my daughter, you know, when she gets married, hopefully in 10 years from now, I said, never marry a man with soft hands because he's gonna be broke. It's gonna work. He has that hard hands, hard, strong hands.
Yes.
That's my dumb story. Sorry, Alex. I derailed.
This might be a hard question, but can you? Is there 5 guitar players that you could name that kind of like, you know, shaped, you know, and it's influenced you in what you do right now, you know, and where you are as a player?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I can. There's one of those, like with like people do their top records. There's always like the rotating ones, you know. They're like, you know, depending on the mood, but like, okay, I'll just like I'll go with the more historical, like, oh, this makes sense, you know, with the context of it. Like we just discussed at the beginning, you know, like, not that there's anything in common technique wise or whatever, but yeah, I fell in love with the first how many Van Halen records, you know.
Me too.
Van Halen 1 up through 5150. And everything. It was 1986 when that came out, I think. But those albums, and so I would consider, you know, that was just something that had a big impact on me. Whether you can hear that in anything I do, probably not. But it just was the initial inspiration and just, you know, seeing a dude that was, you know, I obviously communicate my enjoyment of playing much differently than him, but you know, he just looked like he's having the time of his life up there. You know, he's all cheesy smile, like, can you believe I'm doing this? You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so that really like just inspired me. It looked like, it's like, man, these guys look like they're having a great time. And I bet they don't do any drugs either. You know, that kind of thing. So, yeah, that. And then I would say moving on, sorry, I Ride the Lightning through And Justice for All. It's just like, sorry, you know, people can say, you know, justifiably in certain instances, but people can talk all the crap they want, but man, sorry, the solo on Damage Incorporated, sick. So sick. Come on.
Can't touch it. Yeah. Perfect it.
And there's players who are more like, you know, and this is obviously nothing against those guys, but, you know, more, you know, that era, especially Technician, you know, super shredder dudes. You know, if there's some sort of metric of, you know, good, better, whatever, it's music, there shouldn't be. But, you know, more adept at that sort of thing. But there was just some about just like no choice and just, it was just rocking enough to be like air guitarable, but still shredding enough to be impressive. You know, that's a hard thing to do. You're either like, you know, just like either something's hot rocket sounding, or it's like so over the top, and you're just like, well, this only appeals to just guitar players, not people who like music. And at that point in his like playing history, it was just like that happy, maybe the sort of unintentional intersection of both, and it was just great, you know. So I absolutely, I know he was kind of like sort of in the same position I was with Kill 'Em All. He was kind of like, I guess I'm going to do this now, you know, and then kind of and then, but yeah, Ride the Lightning through And Justice for All. Come on.
Yeah, I agree, man.
And then I think actually Alex and I talked about this on that tour we were on. Billy Duffy. Billy Duffy, man. That's one.
You know, tone on there, the Gretsch and
yeah. I mean, I wish
a Roland or something like that. He's like a Roland jazz.
A JC 120. He had a JC 120, and now his rig now it's always I shouldn't say always, but usually for all the clean, like, you know, Love and the first few records, well, not even obviously not Electric, but like Love and Dreamtime, earlier stuff, the clean stuff, it's JC 120 and then the Gretsch or whatever. And then otherwise it's very much Les Paul. And if he's doing like something that is a more British sounding thing, it's sometimes it's a Vox, other times it's he's recently had like a Friedman, I don't know, one of their brown eyes. Sure, one of those. And then like two Marshall cabs, like an AC30s on top, or one AC30, one JC 120, and then you know whatever is filling the Marshall space, whether it's an actual Marshall or not, is in the center.
Right.
And he had like I think like a DC30, a matchless for a while and stuff like that, maybe to do kind of like more of the Voxy thing or whatever. But his like that's something that I first heard them probably Firewoman on the radio when they were touring with Metallica, like that era, you know, they were getting pushed like that. But I probably heard something from Electric before that, didn't know what it was. But you know, I knew him from that era, and then you know, heard just cultural landscape. She still sang her on the radio here and there, but didn't really pay much attention. It took 2001, I think, when they put out Beyond Good and Evil. Where that song Rise was on the radio. And I remember hearing like, this is fucking sick. It's heavy, but it's not trying to sound like new metal of the time. They're not trying to start rapping or doing anything. It was just like, this is great. And so I remember getting that or like hearing that. I'm like, this is a cult. It's like way heavier than I remember. So then I bought the CD. Still one of the best hard rock records of all time, in my opinion. It's so good. It got so overlooked. You know, 9/11 happened and everyone forgot about everything. And it's just like that record got lost. And they still only do one of the songs off that record live, which is Rise, which is cool, but it's literally nothing but bangers. There's the one song that's like, oh, it's the ED record, or it's the, you know, the kind of more ballady, you know, sort of song. But all the songs on that record are so good. So I think that really revitalized my interest in them. And then I went and bought everything. And I still say, like, Billy's playing on the first like Dreamtime, Love,
Yeah.
and then I still appreciate Temple and Electric and the self-titled Occult record and Ceremony, but like Beyond Good and Evil to present actually the stuff they're doing now isn't as overly heavy as Beyond Good and Evil because times change.
More going back. I think the latest record is more going back to the roots. It's new wave.
Hidden City, is that what it's called, or is that the last one before?
A snake on the front. I can't think.
Okay.
But it's really, really great record. And it's I like how you say Billy Duffy because it's the same for me. He's one of my big influences, and he's kind of like every cult record is completely different. And just guitar wise, his journey as a guitar player, like you said, like wow, this is the cult. This is so heavy. Going from like this clean kind of psychedelic new wave guitar playing to like this super heavy open atmospheric tones in his guitar playing, and he's probably one of the most diverse players I think out there as a rock.
And I think he's respected. Like people are like, oh, Billy Duffy, man, that guy's so solid and he just does what he does. But I think he's obviously not he's not used in the same breath as I'm not saying like a Slash type character or type of player, but just like I feel he's a bit underrated because he isn't as flashy as what he does. Like, he does what's appropriate for the song. His stuff is so nice and textural, and then the heavy stuff is just fucking kicks ass. And his leads and stuff, it's like, oh, that's just tasteful. It's not. I mean, it sounds like a sort of like charitable thing to say, and I don't mean it this way, but it's nice. You know what I mean? Not nice in the sort of what else will I say right now, but it's just tasteful. It's tasties. So it's his playing is great and his tone is great, and he's just been he to me is like that's what I mean, not to the levels of others, but he's just kind of like what a rock star should look like and be. He's just cool up there. He looks awesome. His tone is great. His playing is super solid. And it's like he's having a understated dude who's probably 61 or 62 years old. Good time up there.
Right.
He's just great.
And
so I definitely take influence from like, some of the early cult, like the Dreamtime Love, some of the stuff he does there. And then I don't know, the heavier stuff I love to death, but probably some of that stuff too. I don't know. Beyond Good and Evil. If anyone likes heavy rock music, they need to own this record.
I saw that tour actually, Beyond the Good and Evil tour, and they were just phenomenal. It was unbelievable. It was when like was it Matt Sorum came back and did that record. And,
Matt Sorum did that, and there was the bass player was like I forget. He only did like a couple tours with him, but he was
he had like spiky short black hair, I think.
Billy something or other. I don't remember. Not Billy. I forget what his name. It wasn't Billy Duffy, but it was like a different. It was I think some British guy or another British fellow or something. They killed it. There's a DVD they put out. I want to say like 2003 or 4 called like. It was like a playoff that it was like In the Time of Evil or something like that, or Live Beyond Good and Evil or something like that. And it's pretty good. It's shot, and I want to say it's probably in LA at like Fonda or something like that, but it's like, it's pretty killer. The playing's great. They had that guy that does second guitar live with them sometimes, the dude that wears like a fishing hat and sunglasses in the back.
Oh yeah.
I'm not really that guy.
That
guy.
He's got like a P90, like a what are those? Les Paul Jr. or something like that. He would play. P90.
It's like the guy. It's like he gets yelled at if he moves around too much.
Hand
in the back in the shadows. Don't move.
Back there, just kind of he's in a little space and
exactly.
He's like rocking out.
I think as far as those three guys, definitely. Beyond that, there's people that just kind of move in and out. When I was living in Chicago, that was the height of the whole late 90s Skin Graft Records kind of no wave, like Drag City, like Jesus Lizard, and all those like kind of more like just like heavy rock bands, but not metal heavy, more just really abrasive and kind of dissonant, like heavy rock bands. And that was all around me. Like half my friends played in bands like that, or like booked those bands, or like you'd see those guys out at a bar or what, you know. And so it was just the exposure to that was like this really kind of like, you know, I was telling myself, I was like, oh, these guys are just super like raw players, and it's just this genius unorthodox thing, and they don't know what they're doing, but it's like they're incredible at the same time. And it turns out half of them are like, well, he actually was a classically trained guitar player in his 20s, and you know, so he knows what he's doing. I was thinking like I could do that because I don't know what I'm doing too, you know, that kind of thing. And that sort of deal. And but yeah, just a lot of those bands are just like some of those players in those bands that really technically didn't, you know, had no formal musical training, but it was just their approach to the instrument was so just out there. It's like, I'm here to create this sound, whatever that sound is in their head. And my approach to doing that is different.
I think that guitar player played the Jesus Lizard guy played Tomahawk. I don't know if you've heard this.
Yeah,
Tomahawk.
Yeah. Tomahawk. Yeah. We're fans of him in this house.
Awesome, man.
Yeah. So it's he was a Hiwatt player, and then he had as well, and I think the guitars, like back in the day, I'm not sure, but now he has like some sort of custom. I don't know what the brand is, but it's very much his own thing. I've made one of those the metal aluminum neck or whatever it is, you know, kind of guitars. Not Travis Bean, but one of those style.
Right.
Yeah.
Cheech wants to know, what about collaborations over the years? What was it like working with Phil Anselmo and others?
That was actually
what was that?
That's a whole non-story story. We didn't really work with him on beyond like emails. It was our old bass player Derek was a very big Pantera Phil Anselmo world fan. And he'd met him, I forget, I think they had a mutual friend or something who'd kind of introduced them. So he got in touch with him and was like, hey, you want to do this speaking, you know, it's just more of like a speaking in the little screen part on Anthropocene, which is 2015. And maybe this is like an age thing. But myself and Travis are like, you know, we were already, by the time that band came to prominence, we were already like, oh, Carcass and freaking the gory death metal and blast beats and whatever. So we were just kind of like, oh, I remember that. Like, I mean, obviously remember it, you know, it was just like, that wasn't on our radar at the time. That's not something we ever had that sort of part of our listening life, whatever. But, you know, a couple of the other guys were, you know, 7 or 8 years younger than us. So for them, that was like their heyday, you know, so like, oh yeah, my God. So, both Travis and I being not, I don't say completely contrarian, but just sort of like, I don't know about fucking shit.
Yeah.
You know, now, if you ask, you know, Bill Steer, you asked,
Yeah.
one of the dudes from, well, I don't know, get in my own sort of, one of the guys from Holy Terror or something like that. Like, yes.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, but so like, okay, you know, that's cool and whatever. And he agreed to do it, you know, graciously. So he did that, and it's kind of like, I don't want to say a favor, but just sort of like kind of a favor for Derek and then the other fellow involved, you know. So yeah, he kind of did it in his own studio at his place, and then we sent it to Otero, and then he flew it in and kind of manipulated it to get the timing right, and, you know, set in the mix, everything like that. So that was that was just a kind of a sort of thing that we were in the later stages of doing that record, and then it was like, oh, I guess it is a thing now, you know. So we hadn't planned on it ever, so it just sort of it happened, you know, not to degrade anyone's level of participation or anything like that. It was just, oh shoot, we weren't expecting this, and there you go, you know. So
right,
it was, we were already kind of like in the mental anguish of, you know, into mixing it and, you know, doing all this stuff and, you know, trying not to stab each other in our sleep and everything, you know. So it was you know, so we were already at that point, so it was more of just like, okay, fine, just have them do it and we'll fix it, whatever, you know, that sort of thing.
Right.
So,
yeah.
It didn't sound like much of a collaboration.
Well, no, I mean, it was like, I mean, it was
just was what it was.
our part, it was just like, it wasn't anything. It was just very much, one of our members is like just a huge Pantera fan, and
Yeah.
it was just like, this was, he's like super jazzed about it, So yeah, I don't blame it if, I had, one of my counterpart people, I'd have been like, oh, this would be great,
We would have all done the same exact same thing.
Oh, yeah.
If you can do it, you can do it.
Well, speaking
he was kind enough to do it for us, He didn't
Exactly.
So that's.
Is there any guitar player or any musician in particular that, if you had the opportunity, that you would love to do a collaboration with?
Travis might agree with this or might not. I'm just because I'm use him as a reference with this because I know he's
specifically in the yacht rock genre.
Well, when there was a brief period, like, because we were trying to I'm sure, Alex, I don't know if you guys have the same sort of experience or whatever, but since everything now moves at such a speed to where, like, apparently if your record's older than a few months, it's old and no one cares anymore.
Yeah.
That's me pushing against that. I know I'm this reality. I should be more open to it, but I'm just like pushing against that. I'm like, this is the dumbest thing ever. I don't care if these children are over something 2 minutes after it comes out. Right. You can't out at every whim, whatever. So
yeah.
During that, we were like, okay, well, Terrasite came out 2023 May. Well, do you want to try to bridge the gap with something? So it's this brief discussion of doing like a covers record, like maybe 1 or 2 new originals and then 3 or 4 covers or whatever. That got nixed because they're like, well, it's going to take us X amount of time to do all this anyway, and we're going to waste time when we should actually be writing material, blah, blah, blah. But to get back to the yacht rock thing, I was like, what do if we can do and not make it with blast beats or not do double bass or any of that crap, if we could do Ride Like the Wind, like a darker kind of version of it, but not make it not try to, like, because that's what every heavy band that tries to do a song that's not a metal song, they're like, oh, let's just have blast beats.
Yeah.
No, or let's just like double bass everything or chunk everything up. It's like, no, honor it. I mean, I'm not expecting Travis to like step out of himself and, really, croon on stuff, but like that song is kind of a little bit sort of slinky, kind of darker vibe to it. Despite our song, I'm like, we could do it, so there was this, I know it was a 10-minute
story. I think you should do it.
Material, but that was like a near miss of our yacht rock kind of like,
look, there's still time. I think you should do it.
Hey, there's a few songs that are not metal. Well, actually, that's your discussion. If we're going to do like a covers thing, none of them can be metal. Like, it can't be like,
right.
You're like, oh, we're just going to do, I don't know, Sepultura song or whatever. It's like, no,
we could flip this too. So is Immolation going to do a cover on their next album?
Please.
We can flip it.
Probably not.
I'd like to win.
Actually, maybe one day we'll release it. With one of my other projects, we did Marianne by Sisters of Mercy.
Oh.
And, that's one of my favorite songs, and the first Sisters record is one of my all-time favorite records. So I always wanted to cover that. Mm-hmm. But we took the approach where I think if you're going to do a cover, try to kind of make it your own, and so yeah, it was really interesting, and it's kind of like the way we did it is kind of like listening to early Paradise Lost.
Oh yeah, I absolutely respect that. I think that's great.
Yeah, but I wouldn't want to do like a death metal cover or something like that.
Yeah, we did it on, I think what record it was for Death Atlas, that we did a Dead Can Dance cover for that, and it's very faithful to the original. I mean, the guitars are heavier, of course.
Right.
Everything else is pretty on,
Yeah.
And so I was pretty happy with how it came out, and it was just like, that was kind of the thing, is like, yeah, it was a lot of work, probably more so for David Otero to get us all, sort of corralled, and like these guys did horns on. Well, that's none of us. So these guys to fly in their horns and to fix that stuff and everything. So it's more work for him. But as far as like doing covers like that, if it's not some techie metal crap, we can. It's like, here, just learn the part. Okay, mess around with it for a bit, figure out what you're going to do, settle on it, get competent enough where you can do it, and then just play. So it's like, for us, it was kind of like, oh, after doing that whole record, this is just like fun time. Here, let me just EVO everything, or whatever.
Right.
And it's, that kind of deal. So it's like, it was fun. So, I mean, that over the course of like 4 or 5 songs, maybe we'll change our tune, but it's like, there's an appealing element to that, that it might be fun,
So let me ask you this. When you two were on tour together, how much of your 24-hour day was consumed with nerdy gear talk?
Oh, we didn't actually. I think there was a couple times where it was more like we'd see each other on side stage and be like, "Hey, blah 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 blah."
Yeah.
More of that.
Yeah.
And there was a moment with I think Bob was asking me about something on my pedal board or whatever, and Travis was like, he did this kind of gorilla like, boink, took a photo, and so he has this. He sent me this photo a few months ago. It was like, here you two are, back of your bald heads or whatever. And so it's me like kind of pointed side to Bob, and over there he's like, I thought it was cute, or something. And so,
yeah.
Oh, but I'm sorry, I totally got off subject there. You asked me who I'd want to do potentially a collaboration with.
Yeah.
I was thinking like it'd be more guest, and I'm sure he would be totally down for this. Travis would be guest vocal wise. I would say it'd be neat. I don't know how he would do it, or if she'd even care. Diamanda Galás.
Oh, that would be super cool. And I could see that too with Travis too and her.
Yeah, he's a huge fan. Actually, funny thing is, she's from San Diego. I didn't know that until a few years ago.
Oh, yeah. Huh.
Yeah, I was associated with her as like, well, she's got to be from New York or London or something like that, And or whatever. No, she's from San Diego. She grew up there and has since lived elsewhere. But I think her mother is, no one's a young person in this. I mean, she's her, Diamanda Galás is probably, I'm 50. She's or almost 50. She's probably like maybe mid-60s, early mid-60s. So her parents got to be older. So she's actually back in San Diego a ton because her mother's, very elderly. So she's, recorded certain EPs and stuff at the studio Singing Serpent, which when I'm back in San Diego, I actually am at a vast majority of the time because my buddy Adam at Satellite has a place there that I stay and hang out, So her records are sitting there right in there on the wall and, that sort of stuff. So it's interesting, I mean, that's I'm sure she has much bigger fish to fry and I'm sure she's got, overwhelmed with offers and just her own material. But if she would even entertain that, that would be really cool.
I think that's a great choice. And I could see that. Like, hey man, next Cattle record, you guys should do it. Reach out, man. That would
I might love just have to walk into the lounge in the recording studio and she's sitting there reading a magazine or something,
Yeah.
I don't know. So it's, I mean, I know the owners obviously know her, I'm not sure probably like super well, but know her enough to where they'd be like, oh yeah, next time I see her, I'll, accidentally on purpose mention something like that.
Right.
So, yeah. Sure. So I don't know. That's the only thing I can think of right off the top of my head. Cause I think instrumentally, the only thing you could really do is like, so-and-so is going to drop in and make some sick lead or something. It's just like, I don't know. Cool, I guess. But I think we're fine instrumentally. I just think that stylistically, like when she gets into the crazy stuff, I mean, just her regular singing voice too, but just, how she goes off, that could really work. And I would, be very happy to be contributing to writing something around that, or to like, with whatever she puts down, not like do the thing you do or anything, whatever, but just, contributing for like a landscape for her to go crazy on,
Right.
Yeah. No, that's a perfect choice. I would say I could, that makes sense, to have her, do something with you guys. I would love to hear that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Once again, well, we had actually not like her, but, on Harvest Floor, we had, Charvel from Swans did a couple vocal lines.
Oh wow!
Yeah, the guy Billy Anderson that did that record for us, he did that one in Karma. He did soundtracks for the blind for them, and then I think he was their live sound guy for a while too. So he's just like we were talking about, like was like, we should get Jarbo to do something, or Michael, you know, and he's like, I got her phone number. You want me to call her? Okay. And so he calls her, and I mean, without, you know, little arm twisting, I mean, not at all. She okayed it. So I'm like, oh, great. Wow. This is an honor. And so she, did in her studio, did some vocals. And then she's, I mean, at least at the time, was living in Atlanta. So she came out and saw us at Masquerade in Atlanta, old Masquerade. So, yeah.
Oh, wow.
So that was kind of a cool honor.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, if she's open to doing it, who knows, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So speaking of new record, is there anything in the works that you guys, are you starting to work on new material at all, or
yeah.
is that still...
Yeah. We actually, it's funny you mentioned that. We started back in like maybe September, October, because I mean, management was kind of like literally, okay, Terrasite came out May 2023. We had a management call in November of that year saying, you guys need to start writing new songs. We're like, our record's been out like what, 5 months, 5.5 months? It was like, well, kids get real sick of these, you know, it's old. It's going to be another month. It's going to be an old record. And we're like, I know we were used to the old cycle of like, you write, you record the record, you put it out, you tour for like a year and a half, and then, then you hold up for a year and write it, and then you record it. And, you know, now with everything with like vinyl production, all the formats have to be out at the same time. You deliver your product, and 8 months later it comes out. So you got to add that on to your time of the duration. So we were just kind of like, our record just came out. What are you talking about? You know? So we kind of half listened and putzed around, and all of a sudden it's, you know, September of 2024. And we're like, oh, I guess we better start doing stuff. So we've been together a couple times, or a few times actually. So everything's really in the really early stages. We have what we have so far, I really like. But we were on our, like a band chat, you know, we do, every band has the messenger chat or whatever. And we were talking, and it was just like, guys, we need to get on this. Because we did what we always do and book recording time, and then hope we're done, you know, that kind of thing. Well, we have recording time set for next fall. We have, between now and then, unless something, you know, out of nowhere gets offered, or like, oh, you want to go to Japan for 4 days or whatever, we have 2 tours booked right now. So take those tours take out of the equation. You're not going to do anything then. Well, we're going to try to, because we're in this situation now. But are you ready to go in at like early mid-September with a whole new record? I don't think so. So we got to, at least at this point. So we just got to buckle down and really, really get to work on stuff. Right. And I mean, I have a million riffs. Bell's got a million riffs. You know, all ideas and parts and everything like that. And I actually was recording some of those to send to the guys and go, it's okay, you know, that kind of stuff. So prior to this tour we have coming up, we're meeting in San Diego, and I'm gonna, you know, we're gonna, you know, again, hash some of that stuff out and see what sticks and what doesn't and all that.
Yeah, we're in the same right now. We're just like, we gotta get this thing done. You know, this new record, you know, just. So same thing. We got 2 tours booked that are not announced, but we have to get this record done. And
when are you supposed to? When are you looking to have it, like, not necessarily recorded, but finished writing kind of thing?
Hopefully, I don't know. Maybe hopefully in the next couple months, and then we can get in. So hopefully, I think that's the plan. But we'll see.
How does your writing go? As far as like, is it one of those things you just like, okay, we are going to hardcore work every day, unless there, you know, and just knock it out? I mean, pieces over.
Bob's the, you know, of course, is the main guy. You know, since I joined the band, there's some, you know, I contribute riffs and ideas and stuff. But Bob will usually just get a song complete. He will get, you know, the drum machine. You know, he'll do that, program that, and then send it out to everybody. And you know, Steve will do his thing and bring his ideas with the building block, obviously, of the drum machine. And then we'll basically, you know, in the past with the band, before I joined the band, was basically they would just meet up at the studio, not rehearse. Bob would just have everything written. And then Ross in particular would write the lyrics in the studio and, you know, do the vocals, which is kind of a weird process, but that's how it works. fast forward me joining the band. Now it's like we'll rehearse as a band, and then we have another guitar player playing on the records because Bob would do all the guitars. He all the records, until I joined the band. So I just got somebody playing rhythm guitar. But for the most part, I've never attempted to write an Immolation song. We'll see. I just send ideas to Bob. It works into what he's got going on.
Okay. Yeah.
Maybe I'll try this time and write a whole tune, but I'd like to kind of hear where he's getting at first. But we're in the same spot. We got to get this record done because we were supposed to do it last year. It just didn't work out. And you know how it is too. It's like you got to be inspired. You can't just sit there and say, "Oh, we're going to put out a record," and you want to put out the best.
Yeah, I felt that we didn't really have time for it. Cats rubbing on the tripod. We needed, prior to like getting serious into writing, it would have been nice to have one more Terrasite tour in North America. It didn't work out that way. I mean, we're probably going to do another one at the very end of this next year, or this year actually now. But we just didn't get that last one in. So there was this feeling of like unfinished business. Like, why didn't we do another one? Why are, I think it's because we were looking for a support slot instead of headlining spot. Because it's like, we'd kind of done that. So it was like, is there some band coming through US, European, whatever, that's a bigger band that we can support,
Yeah. That's a good thing with us.
And we just hadn't gotten that. So we were just kind of like, oh, well, we'll dig in our heels. I'm like, well, this is silly. We should be able to do that, whatever. And then here we are now. So, we, like, everyone has like their parts together, but I think we're not, we might have to be considering where we're at with things, but we don't, we're very much an in-person writing, so-and-so writes riffs or brings them in or sends, hey, what do you think of this or whatever, or just sends files or whatever, but it's not something that's like pieced together, by one person remotely or whatever. It's like, it's us standing there going, bringing in riffs and doing it in person, stuff's concocted out, but there's a lot of it that's done right on the spot, or at least the ideas on the spot, and then you kind of expand upon it on your own and bring it back. But it's very much that push and pull collaborative thing that both drives us to want to poison each other, and also creates, unfortunately, what's probably the best stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's definitely an in-person thing. It's very old school in that way, because
that seems like a pretty fast turnaround. And I'm always interested in this when we have people, when you all start talking about writing music, because it's so beyond what I can comprehend, is like sitting down and being creative and writing a song and all that kind of stuff. But so when you have because yours is a pretty fast turnaround, I mean, what is the next inspiration?
Well, that's okay. Usually, sometimes.
Did I ask that correctly?
No.
Did that make sense?
No, it makes sense. Usually, Travis will have like concepts, like sort of loosely planned out for albums down the road,
right?
Like kind of this sort of succession of stuff,
right?
And so we'll kind of go in early on in the writing process and be like, so what's the theme? Like, it doesn't have to have anything to do with music. It could just be like, what's the theme? What's this going to be about? Like, what's your concept? And he'll kind of tell us and everything, or like, what artwork are you kind of have envisioned and stuff. And so, we'll have our preconceived notions of what we want to contribute musically to the record. But him saying that usually goes like, okay, well here, I know how this manifests itself from, us musically to like embodying that image or that lyrical content. But we'll kind of write towards that direction, So he usually tells us that, and we're kind of like, okay, now we have a focus, and then we kind of do the, amongst ourselves, like, do you want it to be more brutal or more atmospheric, or what do you think? That kind of stuff. And so I think, then that the kind of like caveman decision talk comes in and everything, and then we just kind of like, it kind of just ends up continuing how it was going to be anyway. But I think it just gives us like, here's something to like embody this, strive to that, and whether it meets that sort of what he interprets or we interpret as embodying that, great. If not, it's the album as it is, you know. So I don't know. And it usually takes, like we used to have tour till we're crazy,
Yeah.
come home and then start writing and have a year off just to write, you know. And
Right.
now, because we don't tour as much as we used to, it's, you know, you have more time, but there's still that subconscious like tour cycle thing going on to where like it's not that you're waiting to be creative until this X point, but it's almost like that's when you do like really in earnest start with everyone else kind of getting together and all that. So it's probably not the best way to approach things, because we kind of got to adapt and modernize how we use our time. But I don't know.
It kind of sounds like everybody does exactly that same thing. Like you kind of think about it, kind of let it simmer, and then you get in a room and it just bam happens.
Yeah,
I hear that over and over, and I think I try to overthink it in my head. It's like, well, all right, so you have Star Wars, and then you have Empire Strikes Back, and then I mean, what's next? And, you know, like that kind of thinking. You know, like what's the next direction?
Yeah.
What's the next album?
Yeah, I don't know. Like I think. I remember when one of our earlier kind of like writing sessions a couple months ago, I was kind of like, you know, doing some of the like layery atmospheric stuff or whatever. Just we're trying to flesh out a part, and I kind of was not apprehensive about what I was playing, but I was just kind of like, I didn't want to fall in a rut and be like, this is what I do now. You know, it's like I have to do that thing. You know, and I still to maintain that. I don't want to be that to be my thing. I want it to be more, you know, have a little more diversity than that, and just not be the, oh, this is what I do now in the band. And like what I said is like, I'm now make Sound of the Haunted House kind of stuff, you know, sort of stuff. But at the same time, like the response was like, dude, that's, you do that. We value that part of what you do very highly. So yes, please do that. You know, don't shy away from it and, you know, think you're going to like, you're, you know, wussing out on something or, you know, copying out on something. Just, yeah, do it, you know? So it's like, okay. You know, so it's like, it was very, I don't say validating, but just sort of like, cool. I'm heading the right direction. You know what I mean? I wasn't just sort of like doing this because, well, what else do I do? You know?
Right. And I know these probably sound like dumb questions, and I know there's a lot of musical people that watch this and they're like, you know, what kind of question is that? But like, I'm the typical person out there, you know, I'm not in a band writing songs and all that, and we just think it magically happens. So it's
a lot of
kind of neat to hear the reality behind the scenes, like how it actually happens. And Alex and I have talked about this before, and like a song, the way a song gets written is nothing like I imagined it. When he described it to me, it's like, oh, that's, and I ask these questions a lot because people have asked me. And it's nothing like what we, like people that don't do this every day, it's nothing like we imagine. We just think you all, you know, like hocus pocus, here's a song.
Yeah, it's very much, I know all bands have their own little methods of doing it. Sometimes there's the person that's the main output. Other times, like in our case, like I said, like earlier on, I was like, yeah, there's varying degrees of who's got most of the stuff or whatever. But in the past 3 or 4 records, I would say it's very, very, whether we like it or not, democratic. Not that there's like, okay, you do this much and I do this much. No, this person needs more. Nothing like that. There's no anything like that. But it's just more, it's a lot more evenly split.
Well, and that seems like, to me, like just knowing how things work in society with humans, the democratic way could also be more labor intensive and cumbersome. It seems.
Yeah, and it's like for business wise too. That's one of these sort of discussions has been going on for many years. It's just like, yeah, everyone kind of gets their vote or whatever as far as like, you know, certain decisions. Of course, everyone's consulted, but at the same time, it's just like, it's almost like there has to be a certain extent of benevolent dictatorship with stuff, or else you're so bogged down on like day-to-day stuff that it's like, okay, I just have to make, or whomever has to make this decision right now, because I'm not going to call or message everyone and wait for them to get off work or wait for them to be wait for them, whatever.
Well, I used to say this in my former life all the time. Like, if everybody's in charge, nobody's in charge.
Yeah, exactly. And there needs to be, depending on what what thrust of that part of the band business or whatever you want to say is.
Sure.
Someone's got to be the t-shirt person or deals
That's
with
right.
someone
Yep.
has to be the person that deals with the bank account. Someone has to be the person that talks about the carnet or whatever, and that kind of, and the unfun stuff. And otherwise, it's just like everyone just kind of like waiting for everyone's else approval, and nothing gets done. You know.
Right. I could see that happening. Cheat said it takes. That's exactly what y'all takes 4 years on average to put out a new record.
Yeah, I mean, if you can, like I said, there's that delay, like 8 to 9 month delay after you hand in your masters or whatever. Like I think we used to be on a lot. Like Surman came out 2002, Humanoid 2004, Karma Bloody Karma 2006. Okay, 2 years. Harvest Sport 2009. Well, we got a new drummer, a new member. Okay, whatever. And then Monolith and Humanity 2012. Well, we got another new member there. Then 3 years, Anthropocene Extinction 2015, and then Death Atlas 2019. Oh my God, 5 years. You know, another 2 new members and blah blah blah, and then Terrasite was 2003, so that's 4 years, and you know we had the pandemic and everything like that, and all these other things. So I don't know, like for as much as we're told that like bands like we got to constantly, I mean, I guess be in front of people, whatever means that occurs or however that, but to constantly be releasing stuff, it's just like there's that strategy now of like, we'll record a whole record, but just record, for lack of a better way to put it, 10 singles and then just piecemeal them out here and there. Because a lot of kids aren't going to buy the full LP or even recognize that format as something they're familiar with. So, I mean, there was like our management also does Whitechapel, that band. And our manager was telling us like they had a song on their last record that they released, I think, a year and a half after the record came out and did a video with it. People thought it was a brand new song because one, it's got a video, and two, which apparently is the only way people watch anything anymore or pay attention to anything anymore. And it's like people don't do the LP thing, full lengths. It's just like, whatever playlist or whatever people do. So that was new to them. So it was kind of like, are people going to record like albums and don't have to think about like the sort of arc of the song order and the whole thing as a whole, and just put a bunch of songs together and like just eke them out, and then after like say the 4th song is released, be like, oh, here's our album. It's got these 4 songs, not some other stuff. Okay. I don't know.
Well, you almost have to wonder. You said the management companies and we'll call it, you know, say that you have to keep, you know, there's a short attention span. You have to keep churning these things out. It almost kind of, if you keep doing that and you keep feeding into that, then it just keeps getting worse and worse. And I can tell you, we talked about this earlier on, like, you know, Sirius radio, you know, we listen to that, and you're listening to old stuff. We talk a lot of people we have on here listen to stuff that they listened to when they were growing up. Sirius radio, you can get in a niche. You can listen to Nirvana type of music, or, you know, whatever genre you want. It's not like everybody's waiting, like, I need some new grunge. Like, what's the new grunge music coming out? You know, I kind of don't get that you have to keep churning it, because we're all listening to old stuff anyways. It seems.
I mean, I get it to stay, like, there's the whole staying relevant, that kind of thing. I totally get that.
Yeah.
And for people who, like with our band, depending on who are, is like, you know, the majority of their living is based on the band, you know. It's, I mean, there's that sort of like wanting to tour to be relevant, or because you should support the record, or wanting to tour because it's financial necessity, or, you know, whatever. It's just, I don't know, like, I see what they're saying as far as, you know, having to be a little more chop with stuff. You know, it's just, I don't know. It's like, it's not that I want to say, I don't know if I want to live in that world, but it's just like, it's so like, I don't know. It's like, I feel that like the benefit of some of our, like, say, between Harvest Floor and Death Atlas or whatever, is that it had time to fester. Like, you become a different player and a different person between those records.
Right.
And
Mm-hmm.
your emerging parts of your playing personality come out and how you write.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, if it's that quick, then you don't have that sort of like aging process within how it's like you need some road time. You need some time to be on tour to
and it's
your life and do it.
Yeah, and it's tough too with the way the industry is now, where it's changed. Where it used to be, when you go do a record, you record a record and then you go out and tour. The tour was promotion for the new record. Where now it's like, okay, you do a new record and it's promotion for the tour. It's promoting the tour. It's like a reverse effect now.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got like the booking agents like, well, are you guys got a new record coming out? And because we want a new record if you want to go and do this tour or whatever, and it makes things a little bit more difficult sometimes because you don't want to just pumping out records every year just so you can go on the road. And
that's just what it seems like. It's like the model is going back to what it was like, I don't know, in the 60s or something like that, when it's like everything was singles, and it's just like, the only reason we do this is like, we wrote 2 new songs, and then there's B-sides that were like a cover of another song or a remix, and called it now, I guess, remix version of another song. And it's an excuse to tour. Here's a product we can sell on that tour. It's like, I don't know.
Well, I bet you if you look back statistically, some of the worst albums selling and worst written albums in history have probably been ones that were rushed. One that comes to mind, I hate to say it because it's Van Halen, but Diver Down.
Come on, hit the full bug, man. That's kind of ripper.
I know. I couldn't get into it. I couldn't do much with that.
There was half of it was covers, and then the originals were like, hold on. Hey, stop eating the tree. Sorry, the cat's
eating the trees.
The cat's eating the Christmas tree. We've been chasing her off there there you go. Hide under the couch.
But I just use that as an example. You could probably just name this band and they have a rushed album. What's that?
Yeah, well, I mean, but sometimes, you kind of, you're in a rush situation where some magic happens that way too. So there's no
true.
Yes, and that's another thing too. Like, we'll be at crunch time where we're like literally, like, we have to go in the studio in 2 weeks, and we have a song and a half left to write. This isn't good.
Yeah,
that kind of thing. And then, not painlessly, but man, those are some of the best. Like, literally, that will come away. That's like the best song on the record.
Yeah.
It's not a song we like, as a quote single or that we'll play live ever. But it's like everyone's like, that song's kind of the best song on the record, and we wrote it under a ton of duress, and everyone's pissed off and grumpy, and it's just, I don't want to, and it ends up being the best
just
song.
Translated right into the song.
It does. That's true, and it's just begrudging. Everyone's just like, we work really good under pressure. It's living hell, but we work really good under pressure. That kind of thing. Because it's do or die. So I mean, what are you supposed to do?
True.
I guess before we get out of here, let's talk about this. You got a tour coming up, so we'll sit on the upcoming tour. Yeah,
that's us, Shadow of Intent, Revocation, and Volodinia, who I think is from South Africa, and then Shadows from, I want to say they're from Connecticut, and then Revo, everyone knows, So that starts on the 23rd of this month.
Mm-hmm.
It goes into February, about a month, and then after that we're doing the front half. Well, not the half, but the front. There's like the front fest season, not like there's like the vodka and then the ladder stuff and Brutal Salt. We're doing the front, which is Hellfest and like Grass Pop and those kind of things. I think Download or whatever. But we're doing a few of those. We're just kind of partying together, not trying to do a whole big thing. We're seeing how few club shows we can play, if at any, just trying to string things together. I don't know if that's actually going to happen, but we're not trying to like do some big beast of a thing. So we'll see.
Yeah.
But
awesome, man.
But that's what we have coming up to
Very
us.
nice.
Just talk of doing something the end of next year, just to kind of get, like I mentioned, get like another Terracite kind of thing in. But that's not even, I mean, that's a glimmer, that's a twinkle in the eye, but that's not a booked thing at all, at this point. So, because we've got to get this record written and get that hopefully recorded. And that's the, it's like now, of course, I'm sure you experience the same thing. It's like these tours are just kind of like getting in the way of actually writing the record kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like this tour. So coming up here, that was a discussion earlier this week, is just like, as unpleasant, or not unpleasant, but just kind of a pain in the butt as it is on this upcoming tour, we got to sit there in downtime and just hammer our riffs between each other and really kind of get stuff put together, because we're going to be really kind of under the gun. We don't take it.
Yeah, definitely.
I can't wait to hear what you guys come out with next. I mean, I love the last record, and
the song,
it's
awesome.
It's a great record.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we're so at the point now where I have no idea what it's. I can't even say, oh, it's kind of mature, or it's kind of like going this direction. No idea.
Yeah, that's the thing.
At this point.
And you could even have an idea like, oh, I want the next record to be this, and then it comes out the opposite.
Always. I always have this sort of mental thing. Yeah. Like, I'll probably go this direction. No, there's going to be some unforeseen thing that or just unforeseen sort of influence or whatever that kind of.
What's going to be interesting for me is to be a part of this conversation and to see how it turns out.
Oh yeah,
that'll be super interesting. If you're me sitting here,
Maybe it's a good thing that we're so like, oh man, we really got to get to work, because as I said before, as unpleasant as it can be at times, we strangely enough seem to function well under pressure.
Yeah.
So,
that's what I do.
Yeah.
In writing mode, just sending riffs like, all right, Bob, here's another one. Hopefully get him going a bit.
Yeah. Absolutely. But yeah, we'll do our best, and we'll come out with the next thing and get this touring out of the way, and then get back to work otherwise, and then have our home lives here and everything, and hopefully standing at the end of the year. So
awesome. Well, good luck with the tours coming up, and my regards to the rest of the fellows. It was an absolute pleasure to have you on, Josh, and always enjoy it.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Thanks for letting me go so off topic and in depth on stuff.
We love it.
Oh, because the podcast that we do is even though it's called the Guitar Gear Locker, it's really just about getting into the minds of musical inspiration and just taking us down that path, and obviously getting into the tools that that we use that make the magic, but
and we also try to make it as little of a real interview as it can be, just a dab of an interview, because I'll just say it, when I research everybody, so I watch all the interviews and they look painful. So we don't want to do that. We just want to bullshit.
Yeah, no, those are the best ones,
Yeah, we just want to sit down and bullshit. And
I've done interviews that end up being not about music at all, aside from like, oh, you got a tour coming out, great, or whatever is the thing.
Yeah.
The rest of it's just nonsense, and those are the ones that I remember that were fun. Is this adding like information that's valuable to the band? Absolutely not. Whatever it is I'm doing. But those are the fun ones. And this one, you can just go off. Yeah, there's tons of stuff about the band, but then there's other stuff about personal stuff. That's great.
Yeah,
perfect. I love that sort of stuff. It's great.
Yeah.
All right, hang out for a second, everybody. Thanks for hanging out with us. I'm going to end the stream here in a second. Don't forget to subscribe. I think we're up to 214. We're getting there. 214. A lot of people are watching, though. We appreciate you watching. Everybody that comments, we appreciate you every week. Subscribe, like. Thanks for joining us.
All right.
Yep. Thank you, guys.